overall, boat crossings are down quite significantly year on year, so that does suggest that the plan is working.
We've just witnessed drone footage of the French authorities handing out life jackets to illegal immigrants and then waving them goodbye as they head on their way towards the UK. So the French are actively helping and facilitating illegal immigration. In addition to that, the French forces did nothing to stop that huge migrant dinghy. In fact, the dinghy came out, then it went back to the beach to pick up even more illegal immigrants and then departed for a second time. During all of that, the French did nothing, and they even handed out life jackets and waved goodbye as these illegal immigrants head towards the UK. I think that's terrible. I mean that anyone who did cross the channel and arrive in Dover could be immediately deported within around about a week.
Wait a second, he's just dragging a line to it.
Is that a warning shot towards us? I don't know.
Well, I was trying to work out.
Okay. The French officers could clearly see we were conducting an interview on the back of the fishing boat. They sailed extremely close to us and started firing gunshots, 11 live rounds. We could see the bullets hitting the water behind our boat. They weren't firing before their approach. They weren't firing afterwards. There was no notification of any kind of training exercise. So it did seem to me to be an effort to intimidate us.
The thing that I find, and I should say alarm clock Brits find so frustrating, Chris, and this is why I wanted you on this morning. Yesterday, finally, the unelected Messiah of Manchester stood up and said to consummate fury from most of us that Labour's plan to stop dinghy migrants is working. This, Chris, despite the fact that 1,000 illegal migrants have still come into this country in the last 9 days since he became Prime Minister.
Je suis un député dans le Parlement du Royaume-Uni. Why have you allowed the migrants into the water? Why haven't you stopped them?
Our order is to let them go like that.
Your order is to let them go?
We just have to say to them, don't do that, it's dangerous.
So your orders are not to intervene?
We have to protect them.
Well, there's also protecting the border as well.
Secretary has brought forward a very rigorous plan in relation to this, and let's remember, of course, the numbers can fluctuate, but overall boat crossings are down quite significantly year on year, so that does suggest that the plan is working.
We've just witnessed drone footage of
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome. You are joined by Samara Gill, and it's me in for the great Alex Phillips. This is a day where I think she would have loved to be in studio because, my goodness, is the right uniting or dividing? It has been a very, very sordid war between the both of them. Two men, Rupert Lowe, Nigel Farage. Gosh. Rupert got on X, or whoever controls his X account, and posted a very interesting video today. But first, let's have a look at what Nigel Farage has said about him in the past.
He's a very vengeful man. I mean, it's as simple as that. And I have to say, this idea that I fell out with him, no, I didn't fall out with him. Everyone fell out with him. I mean, you know, Lee Anderson, you know, ex-miner, is pretty rough and tough and can take anything you throw at him. You probably throw it back knowing Lee, but even Lee said, I just can't deal with this person. You know, and we had to put up every week with the ranting, the raving, the shouting, the threats, the libel actions. There are some people, however emollient you try and be in return, that you simply can't deal with.
Do you regret, though, referring him to the police?
I didn't do that, Zia did that. But he didn't physically threaten me.
Yeah.
But he physically threatened Zia more than once.
Wow, okay, very vengeful man. I mean, it is no secret that they absolutely despise and hate each other. So why? Why today, after the Manchester mayoral election, whereby the right was very, very evenly split and people were having many grievances about the fact that if we could just unite, maybe we could beat Labour, Labour is walking literally through the fact that we are divided, and that's the problem here. Let's have a listen to what Rupert said in the past about Nigel.
Nigel's Nigel. And Nigel, and the analogy I use is a bit like a beech tree. You know, beech leaves are poisonous, so nothing grows under a beech tree. And I think with Nigel, we've got a situation where he's a very able man. I give him credit for his ability to communicate, his ability to, as I say, I think I described him as a very effective ballroom entertainer, which he is. But that's not going to deliver for the British people. So winning the election is half the equation. There has to be a plan to deliver. And it has to be a plan to deliver from day one. It can't be, and to your point, Maddie, I think it can't be, oh, well, let's win and then we'll work out what we're going to do. And you know, we can't do that. We haven't got time to do that. We've got to have a plan.
Well, clearly, this is his plan that he's outlined. Rupert Lowe posted on X. Let's play you the video now, what he said, to bring you all up to date.
So, Nigel, this country.
Now, I think that this is music to the ears of many people in the audience. This is what they've been calling day in, day out for. They want the right to unite. The issue is, I think, the two men potentially are playing 4D chess in this sort of way. I don't know, considering that Rupert Lowe literally ran a candidate in the Makerfield by-election in order to get back at Farage, saying that he will do everything in his power to destroy him. Just merely a couple of weeks later, now coming out with this video. We know that Nigel does not want to do a pact. I also think that's selfish in some sort of way. But Reform has had a terrible month. They're very down in the polls. They've had a litany of scandals. Restore did pretty decently, picking up over 40,000 votes in the Manchester mayoral election. Look, I'm joined by the brilliant Paul Cox, and he's been dissecting this out there. We've been sort of rubbing our heads as to what to think of this. What do you think of this?
Well, first of all, wow. I mean, this story's only an hour old, and you're absolutely right. I've spent an hour working out every permutation. I put this out to my social media followers, and unanimously, every single response has been positive. We must do this, we must do this. And of course, I completely understand that as an emotional response, because we must have change in the UK, and change needs to come from the right of politics, and the right of politics is split. But you did an excellent job of putting the picture together to help people understand why this is, well, delicious. You know, if you it's not delicious in the sense that this is our country's future at stake, but in terms of the soap opera of it all, what Rupert Lowe has done now is take the first step. He's gone ahead and he's basically publicly, without speaking to anybody, I assume Nigel Farage, said, look, this is what I want to do, and if you don't do it, well, that's on you. But I'm putting the country first, will you? And of course, that's incredibly loaded, because it's not as simple as that. There's a lot of water gone under the bridge. We do need these people to unite, by the way. There is no two ways about that. But Restore, for instance, if you take it from Restore's perspective, they've set themselves up as entirely different to Reform. You've got people like Charlie Downs, who is their, you know, essentially their PR guru, has said that their whole modus operandi is, we are different, this is why you should vote for us.
Who we might be talking to later. Do stay tuned for that.
That would be fantastic if we can. And then, of course, from the Reform side, it's been like Rupert Lowe is bad. Look at these bad things he'd done. None of us can work with him. We're all perfectly normal people, but we can't work with Rupert Lowe. All of a sudden, and we've all been going, look, we've seen the way it's splitting. I wouldn't read too much into what's happening with Reform in the polls right now. We've got a bit of a tiniest of Burnham bounce going on. Yes, Nigel Farage has got his own little things going on, but that's going to wash over.
Yeah, they haven't really been hit by the scandal with their own base.
So, no, not with their own base. So this is the point, really, isn't it? Because, no, you're not going to affect Reform's base by anything that's going on. They will not like Labour. They will not like Andy Burnham. They will not like the way that he's come to power. And they will support Nigel Farage come what may. but come what may, might include a collaboration with Rupert Lowe, which is thoroughly interesting. Now, if you bring those two together, you don't actually beat Labour in some places, but you would need the Tories, Restore and Reform, to come together. But it's much more likely to see the Tories pairing up with either or of Reform and Restore than it ever was Reform and Restore pairing together. But if those two come together, Kerry Badenoch has already talked so loosely about working with Restore, well, therefore, de facto, she's got to work with Reform and vice versa. But I'd be very interested to know what the dyed-in-the-wool Restore voters think of this, because this is kind of against everything that they've set their principle on. And I'd be very interested to know what Nigel Farage thinks of this. And he's on the phone now. Can you imagine?
Well, here's the problem. So, you know, let's talk about the original split. What actually happened between Lowe? He was suspended from Reform in 2025. Reform alleged bullying and threatening behaviour towards Zia Youssef, Chairman Zia Youssef. Now, Zia did report him to the police. Now, Zia was meant to come on the show. Just heard in my ear that he's not coming anymore. That's wow. Why, Zia, come on the show. I mean, I actually wanted to be fair, I wanted to talk to him about Ceuta. Am I even pronouncing that properly?
I don't know. I reckon yes.
Yeah.
Ceuta, I've been saying.
Oh God. Okay, you're probably Ceuta. We'll call it.
You never trust my pronunciation.
But I tell you what, Zia is great. He's down in Ceuta right now. He's actually on the front lines of the crisis over there, and that's all I wanted to talk to him about. Maybe one question about the little.
That's all I wanted to talk to him about. Yeah.
Look, Lowe denied the allegations that Zia put towards him. It was pretty serious, and reporting him to the police really rubbed Rupert the wrong way. And he's described them as a brutal smear campaign. So let's just say that the cuts are deep when it comes to the split between the two. I mean, it's interesting, the silence, I have to say, from Reform's side, and it shows what position they... Do you think they would ever accept this under any circumstances?
Well, if the question's framed that way, I think under any circumstances they might, because any circumstances might be complete amalgamation, Rupert Lowe shuts up and goes away. I can see that maybe they would accept that. And one of the reasons, let's look at it from Reform's perspective, and Zia Youssef personally as well as Nigel Farage personally.
Yeah.
You and I were discussing this, like this was half an hour news when we first saw each other this morning, and we're like, God, what do we make of this? And we were sort of fleshing out what we made of it. They'll be doing exactly the same. And they're going to want, one thing they're going to want to have is a consolidated view that comes out. You don't want Zia coming out this morning saying one thing, Nigel coming out, and Lee Anderson coming out. You need a consolidated view of what's coming out from Reform. So they have every right to take time now, because that offer's been made, but it's been made via X. You know, this. I know that's the modern way, but
why publicly?
Well,
which is the question you asked out there, which was so true. Why not do this behind closed doors? You know, like an engagement or something. Come out and say, "Oh, guys, we're together again. It's all good. You know, everything's fine." It is interesting from Rupert's side to go and make a public video like that and put full public pressure on Nigel, because if he doesn't take it, he's going to look like an absolute villain. But if he does, Restore's an interesting party with a lot of the issues that Reform had at the beginning in terms of rooting out some of that extremely far right, you know, verging on crazy anti-Semitism, white nationalism. I'm not saying people in Restore think like that, but some of the people who support them, some people around them, there have been conversations, and Reform has tried to really make themselves mainstream. So what do you think about that?
First of all, there does appear to be a disconnect between Rupert Lowe himself, Rupert Lowe and his social media accounts, Rupert Lowe, his social media accounts, and the periphery of his base. I would say the main core of his base are Reform voters that probably felt Nigel Farage wasn't going far enough and was compromising too much and trying to align himself more with the establishment. And that's understandable, because a lot of people that vote Reform, even if they've stuck with Nigel Farage, want reform or restoration. And you perhaps can't see a path to that if you align too much with what the status quo is. I also think that Rupert Lowe is playing a game here. This is why it's taken me a while to form my view, and I'm still forming my view. Because immediately I'm like, why is Rupert doing this? Because this feels like it's against what we've seen from Rupert so far. Now, it could be a complete change of mind, and he's gone, do you know what? I've looked at the way the country's going, particularly now Burnham's Prime Minister, and I don't want this for our great country. I know that Nigel and I, if we came together, could make the change that people want. That's the best outcome. But if I'm being cynical, and you have to look at this from every angle, then this is an opportunity, because Nigel Farage is down on his uppers. He is yes. There's a scandal, there's a change in the polls. Right now, in this moment, it looks like Reform are losing a little bit of ground. I don't think that will last, but right now it does. So he could be capitalising on that.
Just going based literally on the polls, Reform is in the worst position it's been in since, gosh, I mean, since the election.
However, it's still very, very good.
No, very much so. But it's interesting timing-wise for Rupert to come in now, while you know,
exactly,
while the dog is down.
I mean, yes, and I could have accepted that I shouldn't take a cynical view if I hadn't watched the full 12-minute video.
Yeah.
And the language that Rupert used was more sort of, look, I'm doing this, what a good guy. If you don't accept this, you're bad, I'm good. And that's been his whole mantra so far. Nigel bad, Rupert good. He's done exactly the same. He hasn't sort of said, look, I know this might be difficult, Nigel. I'm not sure I want to do it either. But look, for the greater good of the country, let's at least get together and have a chat. He didn't say that. He said, look, I'm making this offer, look how good I am. If you don't accept this offer, look how bad you are. And that's what made me sort of think, hang on a minute. There's possibly something a bit more to this than meets the eye.
Political theatre, a 4D chess move. Rupert Lowe could never do that. Look, the thing is, let's talk about the Tories.
Why not?
Because Pete Barnes alluded to just earlier the fact that the Tories, this is a gift to them. This is literally the best thing that could ever happen. Now, Alex Phillips, who's not here right now, but I think she might say this is a sort of plan from Rupert's side to actually ingratiate the Tories' position. What would you say to that? What do you think the Tories are feeling right now?
Right, OK, so I think they'll still be looking at this thinking this is good for us. If you look at what Kemi's done so far, she's managed to some degree change the optics that she is different to the past. She's acknowledged the past, she set a stall out and said, we're leaving the ECHR, net zero is a load of nonsense.
Yeah.
If you're not on board with either of those two things, you're not a Tory MP. And so she's set a stall out and she's made it clear that she's, as far as she's concerned, different from the Tories that everyone's bemoaned for the last 14 years. I still think they'll be looking at this going, this is a squabble.
True.
However, let's just say for a minute, and we should have this conversation in good faith also, they could be looking at this going, well, if they do come together, that is a problem, because we can't be seen to be completely different to them. It was OK when it was a three-way split, but when it's a two-way split between the juggernaut that would become Reform and Restore and the Tories, it's a big problem for the Tories, I think, because Reform and Restore can say, we are going to have change, and they weren't part of that change. Now, I think if that was the case, Kemi Badenoch's Tory party are going to want to align to some degree. How they draw that alignment, I mean, I don't know. I genuinely, I don't know. There seems to be, you know, talk that essentially Rupert Lowe is a Conservative MP because he's incredibly well aligned. So maybe that's the route for Reform to do the same. But how do you sell that to everybody else and say, oh, now we're all one big happy family?
Yeah, I mean, the stuff that has been publicly thrown, the sort of mud and worse that has been thrown in the direction of each other. You're so right, though, about the fact that it might be an issue even if they do actually form this pact, because when you look at the Manchester mayoral by-election that happened just a couple days ago, well, that we've got the results now, they had to do a recount. So we had Bev Craig, Labour's Bev Craig, who's now the mayor. She got 47% of the vote, which is outstanding, just objective. I mean, that's just an incredible win for Labour. And I do think a lot of reforms, and we know through leaked text messages that they were all campaigning in Manchester, and then they decided that they were all going to shift to the other constituency, which I'm not going to mention right now because we're in Purda. But they were going to shift all their resources to another by-election that was happening, and I think that somewhat affected their efforts. We've got basically Reform getting 19% of the vote, Restore getting 9% of the vote, and the Conservatives getting 8% of the vote. So combined, that's 36% to Labour's 47%.
Yeah, it doesn't add up. But then, unfortunately, right now, just through happenstance, we seem to be measuring everything through the prism of Manchester politics.
Yeah,
so it doesn't matter whether it's Denton and Gorton or it's Makerfield or it's the general mayoralship. It's all in Manchester.
Totally.
And let's not get away from the fact that whether that was in Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, Brighton, London, we would expect to see a left-wing outcome.
Massively.
Because it's metropolitan, it's full of young people, they see the world idealistically. The majority of them, not all of them, of course. So I don't think we can take that either. I think it'd be interesting to see what happens in the other one, and I'm not going to mention that any further.
Yeah.
But that will tell us something. But we can't completely rely on seeing everything through the prism of Manchester politics. Manchester, I mean, you'd think that Manchester was the north.
Crying. Yeah. He's crying in the background. You're right. You would literally think Manchester was the north, which, newsflash, it's not.
You've got north. They think Manchester's the south.
Yes, true. Oh, God, someone give Andy the memo, because he's really not onto it. He's actually running the country like it's some sort of hokey, like, small town, and it's not good, guys. Becca said, if Farage doesn't accept a meeting about the offer, it proves that he's not one to put the country first. I think Lowe has pulled a blinder with this one. Carl has also said, Restore have never won an election, never, ever. Restore is desperately trying to stay relevant. And Brad says, morning, Samara, I wouldn't trust anything Rupert Lowe does. He has laid a trap for Nigel, which will make him appear damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. Lowe is vengeful, devious and egotistical and as a man. That's Brad in Cambridge. My gosh, I thought you were describing me for a second. All right, well, let's go to break. And after this, we will continue the conversation because there's a lot to get into. And we'll also be talking about Ceuta, all that and much more after these messages.
$49,000 people are leaving Morocco because apparently it's war-torn. But Jet2 this morning are offering 20% off a trip to Morocco for a week. Which country in Europe wipes everybody else's backside but its own people? Here.
This is a huge football story, folks. UEFA has now said no European nation will participate in any FIFA competition so long as proposals to create a company to run the World Cup remain alive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, Carl says Restore is on 1%. Who cares about Restore? Reform is on 25%. Wait until the taxes come. Reform will be polling more, a desperate move by Restore to stay relevant as they haven't won an election ever. Yeah, that's really interesting. A lot of pushback from the audience about Restore. I know that there are a lot of Restore supporters, though, as well, that listen to the show and will welcome this news. Some that say that Nigel isn't far right enough and that they want some more sensible policies out of him, as well as everyone getting upset because Nigel did welcome in all those Tories. Restore is potentially coming on the show. Reform has been very quiet on the Western Front. I mean, do you think they're, as you said, do you think they're just putting a line together right now? Is that what's going on?
Absolutely. Because also, before they can put a line together, they need to figure out what they're going to do. They need to figure out what their strategy is. Now, we've already seen from our wonderful audience members here that there is a bit of a split on this. Like I said at the top of the show, the immediate reaction from my followers was, yes, 100% the right needs to unite. But those that have probably taken a little bit longer to think about that have thought, well, hang on a minute, what do Restore offer Reform? Reform are doing incredibly well on their own. Now, of course, you're better off to come together, but if it's going to fracture what you've already got there, Nigel Farage has probably got either the easiest or the most difficult decision of his political career now. It could be the easiest because he could have a clear plan in his head which says there's absolutely no way I need to do this and I have got all the words to tell you why we shouldn't do it and you should believe me. Or he could be looking at this going, well, the timing's very difficult, maybe we should. How would that look for everybody else? What are the permutations? What would that mean for X, Y and Z? Other policies they've got? What does Rupert really want from this? So, you know, if I was head of Reform today, I would be getting everybody big, you know, round robin going out saying, "Stum."
Well, let's wish that you were the head of Reform, Paul, because they haven't been good at getting their party line together. We could see this with the donation scandal, whereby Farage, and bless him, but he was changing his line every single time he was on air. One time it was for security, the other it was for Ferraris, the other it was just a gift, then it was a thank you for Brexit. And not getting the line right really damaged him, I think. It maybe not to his base, but to the wider population of, you know, the United Kingdom. I think they all kind of... The word on the street, at least in the very liberal London, is that, you know, he's untrustworthy, and I don't think he's come out that great from it. I also think with what happened in the thing that we shall not name, the way that they handled that, the party, a particular by-election, has also been a little bit fractured, and they really are going to have to come out strong on this one, otherwise it could be another blow.
Yeah, and if you look at all those things lined up at once, it is a tricky time for Reform. But as our dear old departed Queen used to say, you know, never explain, never complain, OK?
That's
and I think that's what's happened a little bit with Nigel there when it came to the donation. He could have just come out and said this was a personal donation and it was for security, and then left it. And that is too much explanation, if anything. But you do have to give them some meat to chew on. After that, and it's only human nature to do so, he felt the need to explain a little further. And every time you explain a little further, if it slightly contradicts the previous or the initial explanation, you're in a whole world of political trouble. So it's very difficult. I think ultimately he'll come out of this OK, but it's going to be a very tricky time, and they've been waiting for something. But as soon as that's over, he'll move on. But having to do all the things we can't mention, the reason that they took place, and now this from Rupert Lowe, that's a very difficult situation to manage, to keep absolutely everybody on board. But I think they'll come up with an explanation, and I think there'll be a compromise midpoint. I don't think they'll dismiss it out of hand, because they can't afford to dismiss it out of hand, but they would say, we're going to meet. True.
I think we also need to think about who's going to benefit more from this situation, because what the audience is saying is so true. You know, Restore is a sideline party, like, you know, it's very, very small. It's about 1 to 3% of the vote, and Reform is a behemoth. It is the sort of actual opposition party if you look at the polls. And so why is Rupert coming to Nigel and sort of giving, you know what I mean? It's like in the tussle, he's gone and drawn his sword first. It seems like Rupert's actually got all the power in this situation, even though Nigel's the one with all the political capital.
Yeah, my initial reaction was that. The more I think about it, the more I'm starting to think that actually, I know it's he who moves first speaks loudest, but I don't necessarily think it is, because the only power that Rupert has is to move this quick. He doesn't have anything. He can't say, he can't be in control of the situation because he is 8% in Manchester and 1% across the country. Now, if that was elsewhere in a red wall constituency or a more right-wing working class constituency, it'd be greater than 8% and obviously be greater than 1%. But he still doesn't hold the power that Nigel does. So we probably shouldn't get carried away thinking this has changed the dynamic, this has turned the tables. It's not done that. in the moment, if you look at it emotionally, it looks as if this is an absolutely brilliant move from Rupert Lowe. And why wouldn't Nigel Farage snap his hand off? And if he doesn't understand the politics of the UK. But there's much more to this than meets the eye. And I think that time will tell.
Well, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call if you've got any thoughts about this. I mean, I usually don't like to do a question of the day. I like to just open it out. Whatever you want to talk about, do give us a call. Paul and I are here to talk to you about it. I mean, I think that there is one story at the moment about uniting the right. I'm really interested to know what you have to say. Also, give me a text. Text talk to 87222. That is the number. And look, I mean, I'm just looking at the policies. Immigration. Restore Britain says they want to reverse mass migration. OK, so they've got this kind of re-migration message that they're towing, which I think is a little far, but that's probably because I'm a migrant and I'll be the first to get deported back to Australia, but I would happily remigrate there. Reform wants to stop the boat, so they're kind of like 1 degree apart from that. And then policing, you know, Restore has gone quite far to the right in terms of wanting to bring the death penalty back, wanting a police restoration act. Reform wants to emphasise tougher sentencing. So, I mean, and then you've got the Tories as well. And there's sort of just a cigarette paper between the three of them in terms of their policies. It's not like it's vastly different, kind of like the Greens and Labour, where they have actually got pretty different policies. So, I mean, goodness me, I don't know what to make of it. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, when I'm looking at these policies, they're all pretty much the same.
There is a lot of common ground, and I think what's happened there is Reform blazed the trail. Tories have come towards it via Kemi Badenoch, and Restore have taken it on further. So if you look at it purely based on policy, the right is relatively united on what it believes should happen next. And then there are some other stuff on the outside of that, which, you know, irrespective of you and I, we're completely agreed on this, by the way, think some of it's mad. It won't be for us to decide, it'll be for the constituents of the UK to decide.
Absolutely.
I just think that they won't. And I think that Reform have set themselves out as the sensible change. Tories have set themselves out as the reliable change because there's a history, and Restore have gone, we're the radical change. Now, none of that can be strictly true, particularly if they've got so much common ground. So it's just what happens to the optics war now? Because if they were to unite, they've got to rejig the optics and resell us the package. What are you selling us now? Is it exactly the same as before? You know, is Rupert gone to the right far enough?
Yeah.
Has Reform gone too far right now? The Tories are going to be over here thinking, well, we're already about as far right as we want to go, really. How much further can we go? So I think they've got to repackage the whole deal if they come together.
Totally. I mean, Reform is really stuck in the middle of the Tories slightly more, you know, old school, well, not old school, but conservative, you know, policies, and then of course Restore, which honestly does go a bit far in my mind in terms of some of their policies, but also maybe they brought Reform closer to the way that they want that direction to go, and that was kind of, I think, the whole point to begin with. So, but it comes at a tenuous time. You know, you've got on the front page of the Daily Mail, you've got someone breathing for air because of the migrant invasion that is happening over in Spain. And I think that we can see that the migrant crisis is out of control. Andy Burnham wants to talk about buns on his Instagram. He wants to talk about bread rolls. I think that's his main priority at the moment.
We just haven't seen Andy Burnham talk about anything serious yet. Not one serious thing.
No.
Buses, number 10 North, what do you call a bread roll, depending on where you live in the country. He's talked about things about growth in every postcode. Well, what on earth does that flipping mean? And what's the baseline of growth? And by the way, pounds per head of taxpayers' money, more of it goes to the north and the south already.
It's outrageous.
So it's like none of it makes sense, and he hasn't tackled any of the major issues. We have no idea where he stands. He's gone on changey hopey vibes. But it works. My point would be on this, if I was setting policy, is we have to win over what I call the normies. So
Yes.
The reason the normies who are the people I rightly understand are disengaged with politics day to day. Not like you and I, Samara, who live and breathe this stuff. They're like, oh, that just happens on the news. I'll check in. It looks awful, and they go back to their real lives.
Which is the majority of the population.
Those people are won over by hopey, changey vibes.
Oh, totally.
Because one of the reasons for that is the whole media output and narrative has largely been managed, curated to the nth degree, not by talk, but by BBC News, ITV News and Sky News have done a really good job of convincing everybody everything's OK. You only have to look at the way they've covered Ceuta.
Yeah.
They just made it sound like it was about 100 guys having a bit of a day out. It's not.
Yeah, and also they didn't really focus in on the deaths, and when they did, it was sort of like, oh, the human rights of this. But when you actually look at the debauchery that has happened in that Spanish town overnight, there's been no focus on that. I mean, we've got some clips I'll show you later of just the absolute madness that has happened in Ceuta, and also the fact that we're being gaslit, that they've all been sent back magically overnight.
Oh, they just went back on their own.
Yeah, they just self-deported.
It's a jolly boys outing.
Yeah,
and don't forget that. By the way, every single day there's a new massive harrowing story. So had that not happened this week, we might still be talking about Berlin Pride.
Yes.
Because it was Brighton Pride this weekend. All of a sudden, that was a massive, harrowing, tragic story just pushed to one side because the next massive, harrowing story has come along. And you only have to look at the way they controlled the optics on that as well. It's nothing to do with the fact he was an Islamist terrorist, and it's always an Islamist terrorist, and Islamism is the biggest problem that faces the West. It's got nothing to do with that. It's got everything to do with coming together. And have you seen what the far right have been saying about this? Like, that's important. It's not important at all. It's hardly a threat whatsoever from the far right. All the threat comes from Islamism. All of the threat, which is aligned with the left because of what Labour and the Greens and the Lib Dems have done. So the problem is with the establishment and the government that's in place now, and they're peddling, if you go to watch BBC News about it, they're peddling this, well, we all need to come together and diversity is our strength. Oh, you've noticed that, have you? Well, you're very wrong for noticing that. That's wrong. That is wrong think.
I couldn't agree more. Let's have a look at what our Vibes Prime Minister is saying right now, while there's about 60,000 people trying to cross into Spain and in turn probably reach our beaches.
Now this is a balm, and no one can tell me otherwise. Apparently, are some people who might call it a cob or a bap or a batch, a stotty. What makes sense in one place clearly doesn't always necessarily make sense in another. So why for decades has Westminster been making decisions that should be in your hands? Today I'm announcing the biggest transfer of power, funding and responsibility from Westminster in a generation. More of the taxes raised in your community will now stay in your community, giving you more control over the decisions that shape jobs, transport, housing and public services where you live. I know what it's like to be ignored by politicians in Westminster. I'm not going to make that same mistake now that I'm Prime Minister. It's definitely a balm though.
If anyone can translate that, do call 03444991000 because that was just a bunch of tosh.
But there will be people out there that are totally engaged by that because they will immediately go, do you know what, yeah, that's what they'll focus on. All the other stuff that you slipped in via the side door, they won't be focusing on that. They'll be going, yeah, I call it this, and then Uncle what's his name will be saying, no, I don't call it that, I call it the other. And then all of a sudden it's just about that. But he said all this other stuff on the side here, which we should be focusing on, but they don't care about that.
It's the communist playbook, isn't it?
It's absolutely the communist playbook. This is incredibly concerning for someone like me.
He dumbs down the rest of the population and his whole, like, I put my milk in first before my tea. Are you a psycho? I don't know. No, I kind of love Andy Burnham. That's the problem. I love a northern accent. There goes everyone switching off. I don't love his policies or anything, but there's something quite naff about him. 03444991000 is the number to call. We will listen to your calls and talk to someone from Reform after these messages.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Well, I've got a rammed switchboard here. My goodness, everyone is pretty impassioned about the right uniting or the right dividing, because honestly, as someone who knows a little about behind the scenes and knows about the drama, as you all do, because a lot of it's happened publicly, I don't know if this plea deal from Rupert is going to be accepted by Nigel. I mean, what is going on?
I don't think we know, and I think we should be honest about this as commentators sometimes.
Yeah.
And go, look, we might be completely immersed in all this stuff, and it's not like it was a permutation that could never happen, but it's slightly surprising, which makes me feel a little more cynical than hopeful, because it's like, why now? What's going on? Why do it with the tone that he's done it? By the way, the tone is, if you don't do this, it's going to look bad. And that, to me, is not collaborative. Now, it's not that I don't think, like many of our viewers and listeners do, that we please just come together. We need to unite. We need change. I think we all agree on that. I just want to make sure that we're doing it collaboratively.
If only people were as sensible as you, Paul. Let's go to another sensible person. It's Lenny in Ashford. Welcome to the show, Lenny. You're on with me and Paul.
Good morning to the pair of you.
Paul and I.
Yeah, well, what it is, I mean, I call Burnham the bouncing bomb Burnham. And it's very simple. Labour think they've got a new bounce, but the biggest destruction we had in World War II was the bouncing bomb, and the code name for the bomb was Upkeep.
Yeah.
Now he's got no, and when the bomb goes off, he's going to destruct Labour and the country totally.
Yeah, Lenny,
what would you say to that?
Lenny, look, I think it's a really good point, actually. And I don't think that we've got to the... First of all, thanks for calling in, Lenny. I hope you're doing well. I would say that we don't know the full picture with Burnham yet. I think you're absolutely right. I think the way that this was curated was that he could get in. We had the summer recess. He's getting no challenge or scrutiny, really, certainly not from Parliament. And therefore, he's getting away with a lot at the moment. He can come out and do all the things he's doing, and people can just say, oh, you know, the people that want to say this can do, oh, he's doing a fantastic job, isn't he? I think as soon as September hits, Lenny, you're absolutely right. And we have to do as much as we possibly can to hold his feet to the fire, because otherwise he is going to become the bouncing bomb, like you say, and cause a lot of destruction.
Yeah, well, I totally agree with everything you said. I'm not arguing with anything you've said there, but the one thing he has shown is lack of respect for taxpayers' money. Because he is spending a lot of money and doing nothing that's actually good for the country.
Well, I would say, Lenny, that's because he's politically, ideologically disposed to doing exactly that. This is socialism. This is soft socialism through the back door. Their whole idea is to take as much money as they can and spread it as far as they can. This is why devolution, to me, is such a bad idea. I see no good examples of devolution. I don't think what the SNP have done in Scotland is good for the country. I don't think what Clyde Cymru and the Labour Party in Wales have done in Wales. I think that whilst I can understand why people want to take power out to their individual districts, I'm a capitalist. I'm a right-winger. I believe that in small government, I believe in fewer people making decisions, and I believe in sovereignty of individuals like you, Lenny, to make your own decisions on where your money should go. So I think you're absolutely right, and I think that is a big concern. We haven't got any money as it is, so why take even more and then spend it on the things that we don't need to spend it on?
Well, can I answer your question there? Right? I totally agree. I'm agreeing with everything you said, but I have been in business all my life, and the biggest industry, I believe, when I've dealt with them, is politics. That is corrupt. Politics is totally corrupt at whatever level you deal with. And what it is, the more politicians you have in the country, the more corruption we're going to have, which is no good at all.
Too right, Lenny. Thank you so much for your call. You always talk a lot of sense. Yeah, you're completely right about all that. And I also think it's totally in Burnham's interest to get everyone hooked on more benefits, more money. What do people like? More money. When they get more money under Labour, but not in the right way. It's sort of like giving, you know, the fisherman a fish instead of a fishing rod.
Yeah.
They want that. They will then vote Labour for generations to come. They'll remember all the handouts that Labour gave them. And there you go. You got your base secured. You've got your next generation.
It's why they talk about solidarity. It's why they talk
Yeah.
about comradeship. All these things should be viewed with a lot of cynicism.
Yes.
Because what that really means is the collective is stronger, and that you don't need individualism, and you don't need to have aspiration. You don't need to be successful on your own and then share that wealth and that experience. We'll do that for you. Here's a few pounds. Here's a cob or whatever they want to call it.
Yeah.
Go and eat. Go and drink. Here's a little house for you. You don't need anything else, do you?
Hokey. That's what I always call
Hokey,
it. That's what I
exactly.
call Burnham's vision of Britain. Look, the thing is, if you can find me a communist or a socialist government that has done extremely well in the past, historically, do give me a call on 0344 499 1000, because I can't think of a great example in my mind. Now, we'll be talking to someone in Reform, the party at the centre of the biggest story right now, after these messages. Stay tuned.
$49,000 people are leaving Morocco because apparently it's war-torn. But Jet2 this morning are offering 20% off a trip to Morocco for a week. Which country in Europe wipes everybody else's backside but its own people? Here.
This is a huge football story, folks. UEFA has now said no European nation will participate in any FIFA competition so long as proposals to create a company to run the World Cup remain alive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Well, breaking news, Rupert Lowe says he will work with Nigel Farage in that X video. I'm sure you guys are all privy to that, but if you're just tuning in now, that is what's going on. I want to welcome George Madrick. Love George, leader of Reform UK in Hampshire. George, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. How are you?
I'm great. Let's take a listen to what Rupert said this morning.
So, Nigel, my message is simple. If you are prepared to work together around serious policies, serious reform, and serious government, then so are we. Not because it's politically convenient for Restore Britain, Not because it's personally easy, but millions and millions of British people deserve a patriotic government that puts our national interest before any personal differences that you and I may have.
Well, George, I really appreciate you joining me, truly. Is Nigel Farage's biggest opponent now Labour or Rupert Lowe?
Look, it's still Labour. That hasn't changed. But I do, look, I think anybody on our side of politics tomorrow, whatever party you currently follow, agrees that fundamentally we must have some form of unification in some aspect before the next general election to ensure that Liberals, Greens and Labour can never run this country again, because we're on a precipice where I truly believe at the next general election, if we don't make serious change, we're going to end up ruining the country to an irreversible effect. So I think fundamentally most people believe that this is kind of on a precipice now, and we must do some form of unification in some aspect with different parties on the right, whether that be Conservative or Restore or Reform, etc. But so it's a welcome open door, but sometimes the messaging can be a little bit publicity, a bit more of a publicity stunt, I think, than actual fundamental principles.
Right. So what you're saying is the door is open to Rupert Lowe. There could be a potential pact.
I think, in my personal opinion, and I don't speak on behalf of the whole of Reform HQ, but in my personal opinion, I think that it's sensible for people on the right to unify where possible. I think absolutely, that should be a possibility where we can do so. But, Rupert's in his message has put a load of red lines down, 5 red lines down. These are not negotiables for him. And I don't think fundamentally that's necessarily the best way of starting these negotiations off or conversations off. I think that some of them will become unpalatable to many people in the general population. I'm not talking about the party. I think in the population, many of them will be unpalatable. And Restore, fundamentally, let's just get one thing straight. They have no route to power. They have absolutely no route to run.
So why form a pact with them then?
Because when parties poll micro amounts, they become disruptors. We only need to look back at UKIP back here, 15 years ago. They were absolute disruptors. UKIP back then were never going to run the country. They never had the ability to run the country, but they could disrupt our political system. Now, Rupert Lowe is never going to get into power with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8%. You know that, I know that. However, what he will do is disrupt our entire political system, and he could potentially hand the keys to this country to a Liberal, Labour, Green coalition at the next government. That's something that anybody in the right, forget what party you're aligned with for a second, forget what party you're aligned with, that is a concern. We cannot allow these left-wing ideologists anywhere near power for any longer. So that's where he holds the keys of power, is his disruption with the party. And he knows he's not a silly man. This guy is a very experienced, very knowledgeable businessman. He knows he has no route to power. So he's looking at the flexibility of what he can offer to try and unite the right. So
you think his intentions are pure and this isn't some sort of political theatre 4D chess move situation where actually he's putting Nigel in the impossible position, which will ultimately destroy him, which means Nigel... Because let's be frank, George, Nigel and Rupert Lowe hate each other. They do. Rupert Lowe has described Nigel Farage as totally poisonous. You've got Nigel Farage who said Rupert Lowe is vengeful. It's not just water under a bridge. There's also been police investigations involved that I think Rupert's never fully recovered from. Let's be real here. Do you think that Rupert Lowe's intentions are pure? He has said that he literally said publicly he wants to end Nigel Farage.
No, I don't think his intentions are pure. I'm a cynicist. I don't believe his intentions are pure in any capacity. I think this is a great publicity stunt on behalf of Restore. It puts Nigel in a position, and our group in a position, where the general population, or the majority of the population anyway, will see this as a genuine offer or an olive branch. But I see right past that. I don't believe it's a genuine olive branch. I believe he's pushing the right of politics, not just Nigel, but other people in the right of politics, into a position that's untenable and unworkable. Now, as a businessman, as I say, he is an experienced businessman, and a little like Trump, they start right at the top. They go for their kind of high-end, big headline-grabbing scenarios, which is exactly what he's done here, because, look, we're on the news talking about it. But fundamentally, if he actually believes in uniting the country, if he believes for the greater goods that we need to unite and stop this left-wing ideologist, which I completely do, he's going to have to climb down from his stern views he is a very vengeful person, Rupert Lowe. He's not just in politics, but in business over years. He's done some incredible vengeful practices where he puts the interest of himself before his business or before his party in this instance. And I believe that could still be a possibility. But look.
But you're still happy to do a pact with him, even if he is vengeful. You're willing to let the fox into the hen house.
That's certainly not a decision that is in my pay grade. That is for HQ to decide, and they are much more sensible than I in these categories, and much more appropriate to do those decisions. But I say fundamentally, as I started this conversation, I believe that we have to unite the right in some capacity, which, by the way, includes Conservatives, to make sure that Liberals and Greens, specifically Greens, have absolutely no ability to hold any strings of power in our next government.
Well, I don't think the Greens are now a problem because the left has been able to unite very successfully. I mean, the Greens polled the worst poll they've ever had just this past week, and clearly Labour's picked up all those votes. Paul Cox, I want to bring you in. What are your thoughts to this, and what do you have to say to George Madrick of Reform UK?
First of all, George, lovely to speak to you at last. You and I live in the same constituency. We've never actually met, but we've exchanged messages on social media, so it's great.
I'm uniting the right.
We're uniting Hampshire, at least. Look, George, I've got a bit of a sneaky question for you, actually. Have you had much contact from Reform HQ today?
No, absolutely.
So, because I can see that you're rather eloquently sharing your personal view, which I don't disagree with largely. But I think ultimately what's going to need to happen from a Reform perspective is that they're going to have to have a consolidated view on what the way forward is, given this. Now, you might think, I might think, this slightly cynical move from Rupert Lowe, and therefore maybe it doesn't hold too much weight. But of course it does optically. So do you think that... what do you hope comes from your HQ later today / tomorrow?
Look, that's their decision. My view, and my view has always been since the day I got elected back in 2021 as an independent, and to this day as a Reform person, I always believe that fundamentally we have to keep the door open to sensible conversations with like-minded people like myself, you and Samara. You know, we might not all vote the same, we might not all believe on every single point the same, but we must keep that door open to fundamentally work together where possible to ensure that this country has got common sense, common ground, and becomes a sensible government in 2029, or if there's an earlier general election. So what I would like to hear is that the door is open at least for future conversations, but fundamentally, it has to be coming from a genuine place, and that's where I doubt Rupert's intentions. But we will see. I'm hopeful.
Just lastly, because we've only got a minute, someone's texted in without a name saying if Farage doesn't accept the meeting about the offer, it proves he's the one not putting the country first. What do you have to say to that? If there's no meeting?
I think that's fundamentally incorrect. Look, social media, and especially Restore, live in a bubble, and they live in a bubble where they believe that they're the biggest party in the world and they're going to take the next government. They're not.
George, I'm going to have to stop you there because we've got to go, but I really appreciate you coming on. I think that's given us a lot more clarity on Reform's position, and also your personal one as well. Much more after the break on this crazy, crazy story, uniting the right.
Secretary has brought forward a very rigorous plan in relation to this, and let's remember, of course, the numbers can fluctuate, but overall boat crossings are down quite significantly year on year, so that does suggest that the plan is working.
We've just witnessed drone footage of the French authorities handing out life jackets to illegal immigrants and then waving them goodbye as they head on their way towards the UK. So the French are actively helping and facilitating illegal immigration. In addition to that, the French forces did nothing to stop that huge migrant dinghy. In fact, the dinghy came out, then it went back to the beach to pick up even more illegal immigrants and then departed for a second time. During all of that, the French did nothing, and they even handed out life jackets and waved goodbye as these illegal immigrants head towards the UK. I think that's terrible. I mean that anyone who did cross the channel and arrive in Dover could be immediately deported within around about a week.
Wait about a second, he's just dragging a line by the look of it.
Is that a warning shot towards us? I don't know.
Well, I was trying to work it out.
Okay. The French officers could clearly see we were conducting an interview on the back of the fishing boat. They sailed extremely close to us and started firing gunshots, 11 live rounds. We could see the bullets hitting the water behind our boat. They weren't firing before their approach. They weren't firing afterwards. There was no notification of any kind of training exercise. So it did seem to me to be an effort to intimidate us.
The thing that I find, and I should say alarm clock Brits find so frustrating, Chris, and this is why I wanted you on this morning. Yesterday, finally, the unelected Messiah of Manchester stood up and said, to consummate fury from most of us, that Labour's plan to stop dinghy migrants is working. This, Chris, despite the fact that 1,000 illegal migrants have still come into this country in the last 9 days since he became Prime Minister.
Je suis un député dans le Parlement du Royaume-Uni. Why have you allowed the migrants into the water? Why haven't you stopped them?
Our order is to let them go like that.
Your order is to let them go?
We just have to say to them, don't do that, it's dangerous.
So your orders are not to intervene?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. You are here on Talk with me, Samara Gill. I'm in for the great Alex Phillips, who I was just talking about with Paul here. We miss her. We miss that woman.
Miss Alex.
And we love you, Alex. And she'll be back next week. Don't you worry. But for now, you're stuck with me. But at least you got your Sunday regular, Paul Cox, as well. Look, there's a lot to get into here. We've got Andy Preston, who I'm going to go straight to. He's a political commentator and former independent mayor of Middlesbrough. Andy, welcome to the show.
Hi, Samara.
I mean, I just want to get your thoughts off the bat about Rupert Lowe's statement, Restore wanting to collide with Reform and create some sort of pact. What do you think about this whole right uniting thing?
I think Rupert Lowe is being very naughty here. Look, Nigel Farage...
Rupert Lowe being naughty? That's unlike him.
Yeah. You know what? Farage is under colossal pressure. Look, like him or loathe him, he's done something incredible with Tyson. They got reform going. But it's ebbing, and it's ebbing fast. And a lot of the uncertains are moving away from them. And their performance in important by-elections is way below par. Farage is feeling the pressure, and all of the stuff that's dripping out of the Times and the Sunday Times every week is damaging them. Rupert Lowe knows this. There's a feud between Lowe and Farage, two talented communicators with big egos, and I think, Samara, that Rupert Lowe knows there's no compromise, there's no deal to be done, but he's heaping the pressure on Reform and Farage himself.
Absolutely. You're right about the Sunday Times front page. Farage struck deal to return as leader long before election. And this is kind of about Richard Tice, certain writing-offs of different debts that happened, and it again plunges them into hot water. You're completely right as well, Andy. They've come off the bat of just terrible polling in comparison to what they did have. You know, they were leading in every poll for months on end. Now Burnham's come in. He's brought the bounce. He's made cool Britannia, you know, Labour cool again to some extent, or at least to the base. And Reform isn't fighting for their life, but I think the timing from Rupert Lowe's side is very interesting, isn't it? I mean, what do you think the Tories are thinking, Andy, at this point?
I think the Tories are loving it because, look, Farage's credibility is just ebbing. Now, his supporters are really robust and strong, and he has done a great job. But they know, we all know, we can see that they were at 33% in the polls a year ago. They're now at about 23. More importantly, Samara, every time they get a serious test, whether it's the by-election we had in Makerfield, which they should have won, the Greater Manchester mayoral election, they should have won, and the other by-election that the Green candidate, Hannah Spencer, won. Reform are doing really badly at every serious test, and they're showing everything that an insurgent party usually does. They're really strong till it gets to the important day, and then they fall short. So I think that Reform are panicking. They will deny this. I think they're poorly organised, and I think there are elements of chaos within the party. Rupert Lowe knows this, and he's making it worse. He's poking the bear, and he's having fun.
Well, exactly. I don't see Restore as a particularly organised party. I mean, they were even cannibalising themselves on X every other week. And I agree with you. He's kind of hitting Nigel while he's down, but that's not how it's going to be read by the majority of people. They'll be like, Rupert's a nice guy. He's trying to unite the right. Just look at what he did a couple weeks ago in Makerfield. He made Reform's life hell by running a candidate for no apparent reason, really. I mean, I get that to be fair, there were 3,000 people that ended up voting for Restore, and, you know, that I appreciate that's the power of how they have to vote. And I also agreed that they should run, because I don't agree in those who are saying, oh, just let Reform take this. And also, even with all the votes combined, they still wouldn't have won Makerfield. Burnham ran a very good campaign there, taking Reform's message, vote for me, get Starmer out. But you're right, it is very strange, considering they were arch enemies just a couple of weeks ago, a couple of days ago, be it, on X. And now suddenly he would like some sort of unification. I mean, Paul Cox is here. Paul, what do you think about it all? I mean, I know we've been dissecting this in every sort of way, but how can we trust Rupert Lowe?
Well, I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that we can trust Rupert Lowe, and I think Andy has rather articulately alluded to that, if not directly. Andy, you said something very interesting to me that pricked my ears up, is that you listed all of the by-elections that had run around Manchester, including the mayoral election, and pretty much said that Reform should have won them all, which would suggest that at any point in time that they would have been the prominent party in that area. And there's no evidence they ever were. This is a massive Labour area. It's certainly a left-wing area in many cases. What makes you think that Reform should have won Makerfield, should have won Denton and Gorton, for instance?
Hi there. Look, there are several things I could cite, but the most obvious and clear and unarguable against piece of evidence I've got for you is the local elections, which were just a month before that first one, that Hannah Spencer one, where Reform were exceptionally strong, and they showed huge levels of support across Greater Manchester, all the areas, but especially in the boroughs where they had these by-elections. So really, I remain convinced these are things that Reform lost rather than Labour won.
I think there's an argument that they could win more hearts and minds, and that's certainly a battleground that hasn't won, that they haven't won. But when it comes to these by-elections, and particularly when it comes to national politics as well, people are kind of just stuck on the same tracks. And I know you're independent, Andy, and I'm getting a sense that you would welcome the right doing well. But the only way for the right to do well is to win over those people that just go, do you know what, I'm not sure I'm going to vote with Labour because my mum did. And that seems to be where we still are at. It doesn't seem to have turned the dial enough. What do you think it will take to turn the dial?
Well, I have to, apologies for being confrontational, but I have to disagree with you again there. I think that, you know, being from the Middlesbrough area and seeing what happened in that part of the northeast and other parts of the northeast, you know, under Boris Johnson, lifelong Labour voters went Tory, and their parents would have spun in their graves, but they went Tory because someone inspired them. And I don't think people revert to type like they used to, you know. I think they're looking for someone with a strong message, someone that inspires them, gives them a sense that the future can be better. And nobody's really been doing that. Nigel Farage certainly did that, and the results in the local elections really proved it. But I think that what's showing up now is that was a fairly paper-thin, just a veneer of support. It's not following through, and these scandals are really damaging him and the brand, because he is Reform, isn't he? Nigel Farage is Reform to most people.
I think it's really interesting, though, what you say about, picking up those extra voters, those sort of what I would categorise as like the Waitrose mom, who Reform is having a lot of issues picking up in the South. Now, Andy Burnham is absolute. I mean, this is very tactical by Labour in general to have Andy Burnham as their leader, because Reform was taking over the North completely. And now Andy Burnham's there. He's a massive threat. Reform actually struggles in the South when you look at the statistics. They either prefer to vote Conservative or Lib Dem or, you know, some vote Labour. So I think this is going to be a massive issue for them. If they did do a deal with Rupert Lowe and Restore, you can say goodbye to that southern vote and that Waitrose mum who will go, what, remigration? What are you no, we don't want that, which is a perfectly sensible position to have. But, I mean, is this really a death knell for Farage? Because if he accepts the meeting, then he's going to cut off all the other voters, as we talk about. But if he doesn't, he's going to vilify his entire base and look like the absolute villain of the right.
I don't think he'll accept a meeting. I'm not sure it'd be wise either. I mean, when you look at it, Restore, I think they're still polling at around 3% nationally. There's very little upside at this point, and it's such early days. I think politicians, you know, long before a general election, they have to say, we will not do a deal. There will be no compromise and no agreement for a coalition. And then, of course, after the event, when they need each other's help, they'll all do a deal because they all want power. But at this stage, there's just no upside for Farage. I have to say, you know, about the idea of this Burnham bounce and Labour are really popular. We need to be really honest. You know, they achieved 34% under Keir Starmer, which was a very weak performance, which is what they used to get, remember, under Jeremy Corbyn. And under Burnham, they're currently polling at about 26. So it's at this point, it's a very muted response to Burnham. But let's see. I mean, listen, politics moves so fast. In a year's time, goodness knows where we'll be. But Labour, it's a very muted honeymoon period, in my opinion, so far.
Yeah, look, Andy, I
think, Paul?
Yeah, I think I actually, I absolutely agree with Andy on that. And I think this all changes again come September. Labour, Burnham have, you know, manufactured this time at the moment where they've got Burnham in, there was a coronation, we now just have to accept him talking nonsense on TikTok for 6 or 7 weeks. But come September, Parliament's going to be open again, Kemi Badenoch's going to be the opposition leader, giving what for. And I think everybody else will do too. And I think the optics will change slightly. I'm not convinced by a Burnham bounce. I don't think it's going to make any difference to what happens in the future for Labour. But I do today believe that Nigel Farage, the onus is on Nigel Farage to get this particular piece right when it comes to Rupert Lowe. He's got to shape this now so that Reform remain the dominant power on the right, which they are. But there's this game that Rupert Lowe's playing at the moment. Would you agree with that, Andy?
Yeah, Rupert Lowe's playing a game categorically, 100% agree. Farage has got to try and, of course, maintain Reform's dominance of the right and centre-right. But the tide's against him, you know, and as an insurgent party, and I say that respectfully, not disrespectfully, they're an insurgent party. They're a party that's saying to people, look, this isn't good enough. We need to change the way we do things massively. We need a big reset. And that's appealing to many, many voters, clearly. But an insurgent party like that, they need momentum. These things can die as soon as they appear. And that's the real danger now. You know, I'm sure I'm the oldest of the three of us by miles. And I remember the SDP in the 80s. They were going to take Labour's lunch.
I remember that well, Andy.
You do not. You do not.
I've had a hell of a facelift. Anyway, no, but I know what you're saying.
Sorry, the SDP were going to,
what you're saying.
And they were polling at 50% at some points, and won little local by-elections, and then completely flopped nationally. And that's Farage's job, to make sure he's not another SDP, which it looks like a tough job he's got in his hands.
Well, speaking of political parties that kind of started off greatly and then fizzled out, Advance UK was Ben Habib's party. Got a lot of time for Ben as a person, but obviously he kind of shut down that party. He had a bit of a disagreement, I believe, with Restore. Of course, Reform, he was kicked out very sanctimoniously. Out of that party, he used to be deputy. The rumour is that he didn't even really get a call from Nigel. He was just removed. I think that's Nigel's big problem. That even though he is a very smooth political operator, he's made some real enemies along the way, and enemies that have come back to bite him. Let's have a look at what Ben Habib had to say when the news was broken to him about Rupert Lowe.
I think what he suspects is that the leadership of Reform is in trouble with all these scandals, apparent scandals over donations and whatnot, and that Reform, nevertheless, is well known across the country. Reform as a vehicle is capable if it has the right leadership, of actually forming a government. And that with the weakened leadership of Reform, there's a risk that Reform itself will be lost. And he doesn't want to lose the potential of a vehicle that could provide the kind of government that he and I and others wish this country to have. And he sees the opportunity, therefore, now to go into Reform, back into Reform, perhaps merge Restore Britain with Reform. I don't know what precisely he has in mind. And then perhaps lead Reform.
Yeah, I mean, Ben is kind of sensible in this way because he's been on the inside and he understands kind of the inner workings. I want to bring Richard in London who's a caller. Richard, welcome to the show.
Hey, so a nice bonus, very interesting development this morning as well. I mean, I think that I said a few weeks ago on talkTV, and I think possibly Julia was a bit surprised. I actually think that the right has got three fairly unelectable leaders at the moment. They've all got difficult people. Kemi is a kind of queen bee, but there's not much of a team with her. And Rupert and Nigel. I mean, you've said it yourself. I suspect Rupert. I think Ben Habib's right. I think that Dan Hodges said to Ian Collins 3 weeks ago that because of all the problems that Nigel is almost creating for himself, that Reform have got a difficult decision to make in the next six months. Now, to me, obviously he's got to get through this by-election, but I think Rupert is thinking towards the future in a way and thinking, well, Nigel's probably not going to be the leader. I don't think Rupert's being that cynical. I just think in a way he's sort of saying, well, we will have to work together, but the likelihood is that Nigel won't be the leader going into the next election for Reform, but they need somebody that they need to kind of get their act together. So I think in a way it's a good thing. But I do think there's an opportunity, Samara, because if you look at, for instance, where they've really gone wrong, all three of them, is in the area of policy. I'm looking at the Reform website now. The section on the policy on make work pay is 4 lines. The policy on law and order is 6 lines. Now, we've got to join the policies up together in terms of the right, because, for instance, Rupert Lowe's done a marvellous report on the rape gangs. And for instance, he has pointed out that the rape gangs are making money out of drugs and out of taxis.
What puts you off, Rupert, then?
Said that we need to have more stop and search. So in a sense, if we were doing more stopping and searching in the areas where there's a rape gangs, for instance, stopping cars, you'd actually be hurting the rape gangs. But we've got to join up the thinking, because it's almost as though we've got. Well, I mean, I've made the point. They're kind of each of the parties is about 30% the way there, and in a way they've got to work together.
Andy, what's your response to that? To Richard saying that they've kind of all got to work together. They're all separately. They're not very strong, but together they could be.
Yeah, there's truth in that, of course there is, but you're dealing with slightly different approaches to policy, but more importantly, you're dealing with massively different egos, headstrong people, right?
That's the kicker.
And that's the killer, isn't it? That's the killer, that's the kicker. And it's the same at the left and centre left. You know, you've got the Greens, you've got the Lib Dems, you've got Labour, so it's the same issue. And if we'll look, actually, if you analyse voting patterns over, I don't know, recent years, the left and right is split about 50-50. And the tough thing for Labour historically is it's split its vote between 3 parties, whereas the Tories have really been united as one. But in recent years, it's 50-50. So that's the challenge. I can't see it happening. I just cannot see it happening. These people are big egos. They're confident. They're headstrong. That's why they've got where they are. And they cannot change and suddenly be cooperative, friendly people who find compromises everywhere. That's not how they've got where they are.
So they're not thinking about the country, really. It's kind of quite revealing, isn't it, that they don't want to make a pact, Paul?
Look, I think it's an interesting point about the egos. I can understand why Richard would say that all 3 seem unelectable. But if you are the electorate, you need to know who your leader is. You can't have a coalition of the right and not have one leader stand out. You need to know who's leading that and under what direction we are voting. You can't, you know, if it's Kemi, we know what conservatism means. If it's Restore, we know that they are to the right of reform, and therefore we know that they're going to go very hard line.
Yeah.
And if it's Farage, we know that this is a man that spent the vast part of his career getting to this point, and we understand most things about him up until this point. So irrespective of the fact that one of them as an individual might be difficult to get elected, I think it's still possible, and I think it has to be possible in order for there to be change. And I think this will be what's on Nigel Farage's mind now. He'll not just be saying, my ego tells me I need to lead this, he'll also be saying, look, we've set out a movement here. This isn't just a political party. OK, it's got one charismatic leader, I hate to say, but it's you know, it's a movement, and who is leading that movement? What does that movement mean? So irrespective of whether they collaborate, you still need one of those three to come together. The ideal situation for all three is they win on their own individual merit, and the rest fall in behind. What we're saying and what we're feeling at the moment is that's not possible. I don't know if that's true or not, actually, because Reform have been making great headway. Andy's already pointed out that they've been unsuccessful in a lot of by-elections, but we still haven't put them to the test. But I stand by the point that there still needs to be one leader. What are you voting for, and who's going to take us into the future? Because if you don't know that, and one of them gets the power, well, it could collapse almost immediately. And you end up with this type of situation you see in France and Germany, where they've managed to get over the line, but there's no leader, no one can agree anything, and they can't form a government.
I don't even see if I can, you know, see all three of them in the room right now, like in a room having a meeting. Like, it would probably end up in a punch-up, and Kemi probably leading the charge. Look, Andy, Preston, thank you so much for joining us and giving us those gems of wisdom. You are right, it does come down to a bunch of egos fighting like rats in a sack. And Richard, thank you very much for your call. Right, well, after the break, we're actually going to shift gear a little bit. I was on X last night, as I always am, doom scrolling. And I saw that the Oxford Union debate that had happened a couple of months ago, I think now, had been released. Now, there's a lot of controversy around all that. The question was, is the West right to be suspicious of Islam? Well, that's a very interesting topic. Jonathan Sakadotti, one of my favourite journalists, actually was there and was part of the debate. And he's going to tell us all the very hairy behind the scenes of what actually happened after these messages.
$49,000 people are leaving Morocco because apparently it's war-torn. But Jet2 this morning are offering 20% off a trip to Morocco for a week. Which country in Europe wipes everybody else's backside but its own people? Here.
This is a huge football story, folks. UEFA has now said no European nation will participate in any FIFA competition so long as proposals to create a company to run the World Cup remain alive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Well, yes, the Oxford Union debate that I watched last night was absolutely intriguing and very of the moment. Is the West right to be suspicious of Islam? I'm also going to ask our audience that question. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Give me a call because I want to know your thoughts on that. It's not just Oxford that can debate these things. We also can here at Talk Towers. I'd be really interested to know your thoughts on that. Having been to some of those horrendous Al-Quds Day marches, pro-Palestine, hellhole, terrible fests out in London, just literally out that window. I don't know. We probably should be suspicious of Islam. Someone who was debating on the side of that was Jonathan Sacerdoti. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining me. I think your clip's gone totally viral, millions and millions of views, as you are usually capable of, because you really are a truth sayer. You actually say what is on people's minds. Can you tell me what happened at that Oxford debate and also why it took so damn long for it to come out? I've almost forgotten it had happened.
Well, the Oxford debate was really a circus, as is often the case these days. Oxford Union, of course, for those who don't know, has a very storied history. It's much respected as what I think was once described as the last bastion of free speech. And so when it had somewhat of a shift in its attitude over recent terms or years, often being run by people who declared themselves as the first Muslim or the first Arab or the first Palestinian president, you can see where they were generally pushing with that sort of thing. And sure enough, this president, each term a president decides who to invite and what the debates will be. And she is, she says, a Palestinian Muslim woman, the first, of course, to run the Oxford Union. And she decided to hold a debate on Islam, whether or not the West is right to be suspicious of Islam. Now, I think that the bar is quite low for suspicion. Suspicion seems to me to be a relatively healthy instinct in human beings. It's what tends to keep us alive in many situations. And I argued, along with Tommy Robinson and Lawrence Fox in that debate, that there were many reasons for the West to be suspicious of Islam, not least the fact that the way Islam enters most of us non-Muslim Westerners' lives is unfortunately through acts of terrorism and violence, and that even if we wish to ignore Islam completely because we have no interest in it, it intrudes into our lives in those ways predominantly. And I think that is true of most people I've spoken to anecdotally. So that alone for me is a good reason for us to be suspicious of it. It doesn't necessarily mean that I think every Muslim in the world or every Muslim in Britain is somebody scary or individually worthy of suspicion, but it does mean that Islam as an ideology, as a political ideology, which describes itself in theological terms, is something that is worthy of Western suspicion. And though we didn't win the vote on the night, because that's always the way with the Oxford Union, the videos...
Oxford, really?
Yeah, well, the videos do go out there, and again, what I'll say is, you know, the Oxford Union has actually rather trampled its own reputation. If you look at its YouTube account, it gets pathetic views for most of the debates. But sure enough, this debate, whether it's because of our speeches or the opposition speeches or because of the topic, they are absolutely getting an awful lot of attention. I mean, my one on X alone is well over 1 million after about 24 hours. And in answer to your previous question, why it took them so long to publish it, they do seem to drag their feet. They like to be the last bastion of free speech. But when it comes to a debate where things didn't necessarily go how they wanted, what they did in this case was they actually made us all sign release forms on the night, but we insisted that we would film it ourselves against their normal rules so that we had a backup and insurance. And sure enough, on Friday, they decided to release their own footage to a third-party website, very pro-Muslim, anti-Western website, and they decided to make a 6-minute edit to try and warp really what happened on the night. And after they had done that with their footage and then denied all knowledge of how that website had got their footage, despite the president having previously been interviewed on that very website and worked with them in the past, we just said, well, you've broken the deal. You're clearly not going to put out the videos, which we've asked you to do many, many times. I was initially told it would be about 2 weeks. So 6.5 weeks later, I uploaded my own video of my speech, and sure enough, within a couple of hours, the Oxford Union decided that they ought to release all of the speeches. So it is all out there now for people to watch, and I hope that people will, because it opens up a very important, wider debate on the national and international level.
Let's take a little listen to what you said, Jonathan.
Can you give examples from the scripture that would point to the actions of any of these specific people? I don't need to give you those examples because all of these men who slaughtered Westerners, who slaughtered other Muslims, gave their quotes from your holy book. On September the 11th, 2001, 19 hijackers cried Allahu Akbar as they murdered nearly 3,000 people in the name of Islam, flying planes into the Twin Towers. On the 7th of July 2005, 4 British Muslim suicide bombers slaughtered 52 commuters on London's tube and a bus, declaring, "We are at war and I am a soldier." In 2013, Michael Adebolajo beheaded the young British soldier Lee Rigby in broad daylight on a Woolwich street, and then proudly told police and cameras, his hands dripping in blood, "I'm a soldier of Allah." Theo van Gogh, stabbed, shot, nearly decapitated in Amsterdam for criticising Islam. His killer pinned a note to the body declaring it was done, quotes, "by the law that commands me to cut off the head of anyone who insults Allah and his Prophet."
I mean, very powerful words. It's no secret that the West has been subject and victim to a litany of terrorist attacks from extremist Muslims. Now, I think it's obviously important to say that's not the whole Muslim community. I'm not going to group them all in together. There are lots of just peaceful Muslims that live, over 4 million of them that live in Britain. However, what you say was very, very telling. And look, I've got Jewish heritage. Of course, I know that you do too, Jonathan. And it does feel like a lot of that community is pushing a lot of the anti-Semitism that is rife now.
Well, anti-Semitism has many root causes, many sources. One of them at the moment that is particularly obvious is indeed Islamic-influenced anti-Semitism, but there's also anti-Semitism of the Marxist hard left, anti-Semitism also from the fringes of the right, anti-Semitism from Christian origins as well, which used to, of course, historically be a much bigger problem than it is today. But all of these things can join up, they can coalesce into something which is quite scary for Jewish people. But just to say about this issue of whether or not, this is to do with extremism, I did mention in that speech as well that dishonest people will say that none of those examples I gave, and there were many others that we all know about Islamic terrorist attacks, that they were just examples of extremism. But they are examples of Islamic extremism. And indeed, it's worth noting that most things that are good, we tend not to encourage people to do them just in moderation. We tend to encourage people to drink in moderation because it's not good for them. We tend to encourage people, if they must smoke, to smoke in moderation. So the idea that we're encouraging people to do a particular religion in a moderate way rather suggests that there might actually be something at its core which has encouraged over many centuries for it to manifest in the way that we've seen it in our lives and in previous lives, where it does subjugate, attack non-believers of that faith and that ideology, particularly Jews, even Christians, dimitude, the jizya tax that Jews are meant to pay if they live under submission of Islam. These things are all worthwhile for discussion, and I just must point out that I spend a lot of my time, a lot of my career speaking out on these things, not out of hate, as I said in that speech, but out of love for the West, love for our values, love for our ethics and morals, and love for my faith. As you say, I am a Jew. I do all these things because I wish for us not to live in fear, and I wish for us not to live as victims of a hatred which tries repeatedly and often successfully to kill us and slaughter us in bloodthirsty ways. And because of that, I speak with a lot of Muslims, Muslim reformers, ex-Muslims, even Muslims who do dislike Jews and non-believers. I spend a lot of my career dealing with these things because I think these conversations are absolutely essential and important. I think we must have them more, and that's why I was pleased to take part in that debate, and I'm very pleased that online it is having a second and third life, and people around the world are going to be discussing these issues. I want it to be done in a responsible and calm and respectful way, but also a frank and bold way where we don't hold back from saying these things. I think it's so important that we discuss them, and I'm really grateful to you for inviting me on today to do that on Talk.
Always, Jonathan, genuinely, I know you've been banging the drum for a very long time, and interestingly and horribly, you were proven right last weekend at the Berlin Pride Festival, whereby, as the BBC reported it, a car rammed itself into a crowd. Islamic extremist Abdul B, with his hell-bent crazy ideology, is what rammed itself into a crowd and then took out a knife and tried to stab people. Paul, you alluded to this, Paul Cox is here. You alluded to this earlier on in the show about the fact that we could be talking about things like that. We've got Brighton Pride happening today, and crazily enough, they're holding refugees welcome signs. That's a very integral part of their parade after all that's happened in Berlin. Very interesting. I mean...
Look, Jonathan's great. I mean, I've seen Jonathan across all platforms having these discussions, and thank goodness he is having those discussions. What somebody opposite to Jonathan would do is say, well, Jonathan's a Jew, he can easily be dismissed because of his Jewish background. I'm neither Jew nor Muslim, I'm Christian, right? And that doesn't mean that I can give some impartial view and therefore I'm right. Doesn't mean that at all. But let me tell you something. The Muslims that are good and the Muslims that are bad follow the same book, OK? What I never see from particularly the Muslim community is them coming out in disgust after these things. They must come out and disown themselves from it, but they don't, and they don't need to, because there's massive cognitive dissonance on the left of Western politics. For instance, you will only have to look at the reaction to just last weekend and the mainstream media and the people that are progressive and liberal and kind. They will not mention what the problem is, and because they don't mention what the problem is, it guarantees, absolutely guarantees, that it will keep repeating until people do. That video that we just saw that Jonathan put together, I assume, with all the other atrocities playing in the background behind what you were saying, Jonathan, and well done for doing that, by the way. None of this is easy. None of this is easy whatsoever. I'm sure it comes at some risk to you personally. But if you cannot look at that video and go, oh my goodness, oh yes, this is a terrible situation, which we've now been in for the best part of 30 years, and we're still not doing anything about it, then you have cognitive dissonance. You do not have a grip of the problem, and therefore you do not have an understanding of the solution. And the solution is tackling this Trojan horse of Islam, that we're allowing it in. We're allowing it in through mainstream media gates, and we're saying, come on in, we know not all of you are bad. And of course that's true. In fact, we've got to stop saying that. We've got to say, well, there's just bad Muslims and they're causing the problems. Because it's not Jewish people blowing themselves up in arenas and killing children. It's not Jewish people or Christians or atheists, you know, going on rampage across bridges in London and killing people at will. It's not Jewish people or Christians or atheists that are doing any of these things. We know what the problem is, and unless we tackle it head on, we're not going to fix it.
Jonathan?
Might I just add to that, and thank you very much, both of you, Samara and Paul, for your kind words about the speech and about what I do. You are right that it is not necessarily easy to talk out on these topics, and that it can come at some personal cost. But what I want to reiterate is that if we can have these conversations respectfully but frankly, there is no reason we shouldn't do them. Those are the values by which we live and should live proudly in Britain and in the wider West. And so we should stand by them and discuss those things responsibly and sensitively. And I will say that what everyone should think about when they are afraid, perhaps, is the cost, the personal cost and the collective cost and the future cost, the existential cost of not speaking out. And so while, of course, there are fears when you put your head above the parapet, or when you do decide to talk about difficult or complex or awkward things, or even just ask questions because you're not sure and you want to understand better, honest questions, curious questions, well, think about the cost of not asking them. Think about the cost of not having these conversations. Think about the cost of not dealing with these things, which are clearly problematic, not just for Jews or for Christians or for any other non-Muslims, but also for many moderate Muslims, many Muslims who wish to reform the difficult or problematic parts of their faith and its foundational texts. Many Muslims I have met are putting themselves at even greater risk by trying to speak out and to preserve something of their faith and their beliefs that they think is vitally important to them on a personal and spiritual level, but they recognize that there is something deeply problematic. I mean, there was one person who spoke in that debate that they didn't publish. The Oxford Union didn't publish one of the student speakers who was a Muslim student who spoke on our side of the debate to say that the West should be suspicious of Islam, and he spoke from his own personal experience experience of mosques he has worshipped in the UK, where he said it was deeply problematic, and other mosques where he said that he felt there was a reforming message that he could get behind. And he was a Liberal Democrat, for goodness sake, so he wasn't far right by any stretch of the imagination. So I think that if we allow people to try and divide us into far right or fascist or racist, when Islam isn't a race, in fact, it's an ideology and a religion followed by many different races, if we allow people to do that, they're shutting down the conversation. So instead, what we need to do is to have the conversation respectfully and frankly. And so I do thank the Oxford Union for facilitating that debate happening. Obviously, there were some shenanigans in trying not to release the videos, but we forced their hand on that.
Also,
and now
the
the
rhetoric,
conversation
though,
must go
there was
on.
a lot of death cult type of rhetoric being flung around. I mean, I saw that, I haven't got her name, Aaliyah. She was talking about how she's protecting Tommy Robinson and
Aisha.
Aisha, and he would be dead without her type of thing. I'm totally
Yeah, I mean, the
butchering what
student
she
speaker,
said, but
she was
yeah,
the opening speech on the other
outrageous.
side. She said that because of the Palestinian Muslim president there and the mostly South Asian Executive Committee of the Union, which had invited him, that was the only reason, she said, that Tommy Robinson would be protected from the riot outside. She said otherwise he would be, and as a quote, literally cooked. Obviously a little bit ignorant, using the word literally to mean direct opposite, one presumes, in the way that some ignorant youth do these days. You didn't expect that in Oxford University in my day, but anyway, I will say that that was basically a threat, that if it wasn't for us good Muslims in this room, the nasty Muslims outside here would be killing you. You ought to be grateful. And I think that that's an absolutely outrageous threat for her to have made, and I think it's very important that clip is also going viral, because it really shows one technique, again, that people are very afraid of.
Well, you're bang on about being frank about this. After the terror attack that happened in Berlin, pretty much none of the politicians wanted to call it out for what it is, Islamic extremism. You won't see that word put into any of their thoughts and prayers, and that's half the issue. And you know what? Muslim countries, a lot of them have a great grip on this. They've actually banned the Muslim Brotherhood, unlike us here in the UK. And we've literally just prescribed the IRGC after they've actually taken a hand in countless terrorist attacks, mostly towards Jewish people. But Jonathan Sakadotti, thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing that experience, because my goodness, when I was watching it, I was like, I've got to talk to Jonathan about this. This is madness. We have, of course, reached out to the Oxford Union for comment. They haven't gotten back to us. I don't know if they work on a Sunday. I don't know if they work on a Monday either. They are uni students, I've got to say. Yeah, they're not up. It's not even 12 yet. After this, we'll be taking your calls and text messages about, gosh, it's all about Rupert Lowe. And I've got a special message from Alex Phillips.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Well, we've got Daniel in Epsom, and you can hear Alex's voice there. I want to read out just quickly before we go over to Daniel what Alex Phillips has tweeted. She said, if you're wondering, how can one demand that the UK is kept a Christian country but the death penalty be restored, which is one of Rupert Lowe's things that he says on Twitter, things that he tweets. The sixth commandment seems to get in the way of Rupert's red lines. Interesting. So it looks like Alex is not a fan of this pact.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone who has ever met, listened to, or been within 100 metres of Alex Phillips would have agreed, would have thought for a moment that this would be what she believes is the way forward.
And she's got her reasons for that.
Isn't. She's not just. No, this isn't just purely emotional. She's thought this through, right? And she does have her reasons, and she understands what it took for Nigel and Reform to get to the point they're at now.
She does.
And I don't think everybody, and how could they possibly, appreciates that. So I think it's a very good point, and I think there's a very good reason why she's honed in on that particular red line, because I think that particular red line highlights to Alex and people who think like Alex, which is me also, that that just isn't going to work with the ethos that Reform and Nigel are trying to build.
Absolutely, and I think it's worth mentioning that Alex has just personally been put through hell by some of the Restore lot. You know, they've come after her. I literally suffered like one sort of decimal point of what she suffered online when the tide turns against you, and it is really horrible. I mean, you look at who they go after, and I'm not saying this is all Restore supporters. There are many very sort of politically involved Restore supporters that just want to see a better Britain, but there are some trolls online that, my goodness, some of this stuff, the death threats that they send people like Alex is completely unwarranted. And I agree with you, she's seen from behind the scenes what Nigel's been building, and I think she just doesn't like that being meddled with. Let's go to Daniel in Epsom. Daniel, welcome to the show. You're on with Paul and I.
Morning, guys. Look, I think it's a really smart move from Rupert. I mean, it's obvious that Restore and Reform are fishing in the same pond for voters, and I think it's important that the right aligns. I don't think it's a press stunt. I think he knows what's at stake. I recently wrote to Nigel, Ben Habib, and Rupert Lowe. And
so it's you. Wait, Daniel, are you at the centre of this?
Well, I recently wrote to them, urging them to align. I even got a photo printed of my family. Oh my God. And I sent pictures of me and my wife and my 3 children, because we have to, no, it's not, because we have to look at. I came of age in 1997, and in the last 28 years, this country is unrecognisable. Mass immigration from the third world is destroying the fabric of Britain. It's ruining our country, particularly Islamic immigration. It's destroying the fabric of our country. And if we don't do anything about it, there's a lot at stake here. I've got children. I've got to think about their futures, you know. And
so who would you vote for?
I'm a member of Reform, right? But it's stupid. It's absolutely stupid. I mean, I've run for the Conservative Party in the past as well, but it's absolutely stupid to have Restore, Reform all running at the same time, because they are actually fishing in the same pond for voters. They are. If one didn't exist, you'd vote for the other one. It's getting desperate now in this country. Something urgent needs to happen, right? We can't have another 28 years like the ones we just had. We can't have it. We need mass deportations. We need to have a British Bill of Rights. We need to sort of establish this is how we operate in Britain. If you don't like it, you'll have to go.
Daniel, I can see Paul wants to come in here.
Daniel's saying he's speaking a lot of sense there. Thanks so much for calling in and speaking about this, Daniel. It's great to hear from you. And anyone else wants to call in, obviously, you should do too. Daniel, I got a sense there that you very much welcome the idea of a pact between the two, and I completely understand that, by the way. I completely understand why anybody on the right would want the right to unite, because, you know, we're stronger together, etc., etc. Let's just say they did unite. Who should lead that pact?
I think Nigel should lead the pact. I think he's done his time, you know.
How do you think Kemi's going to feel about that?
I think she's irrelevant. I think very soon she'll, you know, Kemi's obviously quite a good operator, but
she believes, I think, she is the most relevant person in the Tory party.
Yeah,
I think one of the reasons that Kemi Badenoch believes that she's the most relevant at the moment is because she is actually the leader of the opposition, and sometimes we can forget that, you know, and it would be remiss not to mention it. Unfortunately, Daniel, I think that what we may share the same opinion on Kemi Badenoch, I don't know, but I think she is relevant because she leads the opposition party, and unless you take all Tory voters over to a Restore Reform pact, then they're still going to sit there, and you're going to need those supporters in order to get into power. So how do you overcome a pact that includes Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage, with Farage leading, and getting Kemi Badenoch and the Tory party on board. How is that achieved?
I'm not sure. I don't know how that's achieved, but they'll have to come up with something, because we can't go another 4, 8, 12 years under this kind of socialist. I mean, look what's happening to the place. I mean, in 1997, right, we had zero public debt, okay? Zero. We were in the black, right? 28 years later, we owe £3 trillion. In 1997, our population was about 50 million, okay? 28 years later, it's 72 million, okay? Now, there are 25% more people walking around. Now, I didn't vote for that. I never wanted it. It's ruined.
But then that's the problem, Daniel, isn't it? Because if they form a pact that includes the Tories, which honestly Nigel already had problems with when he opened the doors for all those Tories to come in, Suella Braverman, Robert Jenrick, Nadhim Zahawi, etc., that caused a lot of problems because people don't want just a rebranded Tory party. But then the Tories would never probably meld with Reform if Restore was in the picture. So are they cutting their nose off to spite their face if they do make a pact with them and listen to Rupert?
I think a lot of people are going to need to put their egos aside for the greater good. I wrote to Bernabé, Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe, and I wrote them a long letter just saying you're going to need to put your egos to one side for the sake of my family, for the sake of my children's future. And I wrote them a long letter each.
I hope they care about your children.
Well, no, but
I mean, you should publish this letter, Daniel, because you could be the architect of this whole pact.
I'm not joking.
And even if you're not, you could justifiably claim that you are. So
Yes.
get that out there now, Daniel.
Daniel in Epsom, I tell you what, I've got a lot of respect for you writing that letter, showing pictures of your family, but I also think you underestimate the craven egos of what is being a politician, especially in the United Kingdom. Thank you so much, David, for your call. After the break, we're going to go to Michael Simmons. He's going to talk to us about taxes. And he's going to talk to us about what Burnham might do to us. And this could definitely have some sort of effect on a potential right-wing pact. That after the break.
$49,000 people are leaving Morocco because apparently it's war-torn. But Jet2 this morning are offering 20% off a trip to Morocco for a week. Which country in Europe wipes everybody else's backside but its own people? Here.
This is a huge football story, folks. UEFA has now said no European nation will participate in any FIFA competition so long as proposals to create a company to run the World Cup remain alive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Do you like paying more tax? Do you want a tax raise? Yes, absolutely. I want a tax raise. I want to pay more into the system because it's working so well for me. Said no one ever. Genuinely. Let's talk to Michael Simmons, economics editor at The Spectator. Hi, Michael. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me on.
Sorry, I was just having flashbacks to my tax bill. Trust me, I'm not top earner or anything, but it was pretty gnarly last time around. There are rumours that Burnham is going to break away from the manifesto and raise taxes. What do you know about that?
I'm quite surprised by these rumours, because I think Burnham has actually been quite clear that he's not going to touch those big free taxes, and this was kind of important to his kind of pitch when he assumed office. He said that he thought it was important to stick to political promises. So I don't give much traction behind those rumours. However, clearly, when we get to the budget on the 28th of October, he and John Healey are going to have to do something to pay for all the promises that he seems to make every day now. You know, whether it's more apprenticeship funding, whether it's cuts to energy bills, whatever it is, that money is going to have to come from somewhere. And I think we're going to get into this position where if he can't go for those big free taxes, because he's said he won't, then he's going to hamper business taxes potentially even more, or he's going to again push to try and get taxes on higher earners, or we're going to see more of this pernicious fiscal drag, which he himself criticised, where, you know, we just freeze the thresholds at which you start to pay income tax, or the thresholds at which you move up the scale. And so he might be able to say, oh, look, I've not touched income taxes, but actually he goes for little taxes on businesses, or he goes to taxes that he can do in a stealthy way. So the net result will be that we see the tax burden that's already at a post-war high going even higher.
Yeah, he does remind me of that sort of family member, that mum or that dad that offers, it's like, yes, I'll get you that. Yeah, no problem. All good, whatever you want. And then when it comes down to Christmas, you're like, wait, pair of socks. All right. So I think that's what might actually happen with his budget in layman's terms. Yeah. It's only fair that we give Andy his fair shout. Let's see what he had to say about his plans fiscally.
Now this is a balm, and no one can tell me otherwise. Apparently, are some people who might call it a cob or a bap or a batch, a stotty. What makes sense in one place clearly doesn't always necessarily make sense in another. So why for decades has Westminster been making decisions that should be in your hands? Today I'm announcing the biggest transfer of power, funding and responsibility from Westminster in a generation. More of the taxes raised in your community will now stay in your community, giving you more control over the decisions that shape jobs, transport, housing and public services where you live. I know what it's like to be ignored by politicians in Westminster. I'm not going to make that same mistake now that I'm Prime Minister. It's definitely a balm though.
Can someone decode that for me, please?
Well, I mean, hi, Michael. Paul Cox here, by the way. Hi. We've watched that a couple of times today, and I've said I'll say it again. It's just pure distraction, the whole balm and bap and stotty thing. And what he's trying to say is all the other stuff, which doesn't make any sense anyway. My question to you, Michael, because I'm sure you can answer this, is growth actually ever achievable under this type of politics?
Well, look, I actually think fiscal devolution, if you did it properly, is a good incentive for growth, because we have this problem, right, where if you're a mayor or you're a council in a part of England that's not particularly productive, where you're not building businesses, you're not building homes, you still get all this money given to you by central government. So there's not really any incentive for you to, you know, tackle NIMBYism or get rid of regulations or taxes in your area that this means your area isn't growing. So if we properly devolved fiscal responsibility and, you know, these tax revenues to local areas in a way that incentivized growth, so that, you know, a mayor up north or wherever sees, oh, actually, if I encourage companies to build here by making it easier for them, if I encourage building projects, then I'll see greater tax receipts, then that actually might work. But the worrying thing is, well, one, we haven't seen the details of this, and where we have had questions on it, the suggestion is those incentives are not going to be there. And one example of this is one particular mayor said, great, I want to be able to give a tax rebate to my residents. I want to use this fiscal power to say, actually, you've paid too much tax. I'm going to use some of this devolution to give it back to you. And Andy Burnham's number 10 have already said, no, you're not going to be allowed to do that. So the worry is what he actually just just creates is more money that gets, you know, funneled to unproductive parts of the country without that incentive and pressure to encourage growth. So it's on paper a good idea, but like you, I don't have much confidence that it's going to actually lead to real meaningful growth or improvement to the economy.
Michael Simons, thank you so much. I feel enlightened fiscally. I actually think I know what I'm talking about now. After the break, Stephen Barrett, barrister, he'll be talking about the split in the right.
The Home Secretary has brought forward a very rigorous plan in relation to this, and let's remember, of course, the numbers can fluctuate, but overall boat crossings are down quite significantly year on year, so that does suggest that the plan is working.
We've just witnessed drone footage of the French authorities handing out life jackets to illegal immigrants and then waving them goodbye as they head on their way towards the UK. So the French are actively helping and facilitating illegal immigration. In addition to that, the French forces did nothing to stop that huge migrant dinghy. In fact, the dinghy came out, then it went back to the beach to pick up even more illegal immigrants and then departed for a second time. During all of that, the French did nothing, and they even handed out life jackets and waved goodbye as these illegal immigrants
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back and welcome to, well, the mid-morning show that's usually anchored by the great Alex Phillips. She is off at the moment, but she'll be back next week, don't you worry. But you're in the company of me, Samara Gill, and Paul Cox.
Hello.
And we are, oh my gosh, we're dissecting, we're cutting every way this story about Rupert Lowe waking up on a Sunday morning and saying, I'm going to post this very melancholy video about uniting the right. I'm gonna put down the sword that I was wielding towards Nigel Farage, and I'm just gonna embrace him. And
Have
we're
you
just
noticed
gonna.
the music in the video as well, by the way?
It was very
thoughtful, isn't it?
Yeah, thoughtful is the right word for
Hey,
it. Yeah,
Nige. I know we haven't seen eye to eye, but
yeah.
come on, buddy.
I know you tried to lock me up a couple months ago, but let's just put it behind us.
But at the same time, saying, if you don't do this,
yeah,
well,
it's over for you.
everyone's going to hate you like I do.
Very prickly position, isn't it? Zoe says, morning, Alex. Well, Alex, if you're listening, this one's for you. A reform joining Restore is fantastic news. It needs to be done now, but I'm afraid Nigel will say no. That's Zoe in Lancashire. And David has said, look at how effective fiscal redistribution has been in Scotland. Spoiler alert, it's been a disaster. It has put money and power into the hands of economic imbeciles. That's true. We always talk about devolution as if everyone's capable.
Nicola Sturgeon seemed to do quite well out of it.
Yes, yeah.
It seemed to work very well for her.
Totally.
I mean, she might argue differently now that she's living on her own in London.
She got all those onesies and all those books and candle holders.
Let's not go into how did she not know? How did you not know? But I'm not a fan of devolution. I believe in the union of the United Kingdom, and I don't think devolution has worked. And I think more devolution just means more government, and I don't like more government.
No, absolutely not. You don't want the government knocking on your door and saying, we're here to help.
That's the worst thing you can do.
Yes, as that famous quote goes. Yeah. Look, let's talk to Stephen Barrett, barrister and commentator. Stephen, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us this Sunday morning, afternoon now.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
I want to get into the crazy videos that have come out over the week. I don't think this story is finished, even though they want us to think that all these 60,000 Moroccan migrants have just returned back. They've swam back over that channel, that little patch of sea. They've self-deported out of the very cushy EU zone that they had flocked to under Moroccan government orders, so we found out, at least via the Telegraph. Is this over? Is it all but over? Should we just pack up and go now? They're not on the way to the United Kingdom, Stephen.
No, and that's clearly a nonsense. But one thing I think that your listeners and viewers need to consider is that if I were Morocco, I would have done exactly the same thing. To be perfectly honest, Samara, if I were Argentina, I'd probably invade the Falkland Islands. This country has never been so weak. The West has never been so utterly weak and pathetic. And if we're going to let young, muscular, army-aged men just invade us constantly, and we as a country allow this to happen almost every day, if we're just going to do this and then we give them a free hotel, why wouldn't you exploit that weakness? You know, the rest of the world, no. Unlike us in the West, we are spoilt and we've gone completely mad with suicidal empathy. But the rest of the world knows that life is hard and it's a competition. You know, evolution is a struggle. You know, you have to fight to survive. And if we've given up, rolled over, and we've got a load of wealth, why wouldn't people come and take it? Of course they would. Of course they would. I don't really blame them. I blame us. Our governments are weak. They are allowing this.
I know, I completely agree. And our mutual friend, Kevin O'Sullivan, who's presenter over at Talk, he texted me late Friday night saying, Morocco's organised it, can you believe it? And I said, yeah, you know, we should do that to France. We really should. We should give them a taste of their own medicine. Obviously jokingly, but you're completely right. You know, if borders are porous, they will be exploited. And that's clearly what happened between Morocco and Spain. And you're right about the numbers as well. I mean, it's crazy to see it visually when you see them all hoarding over the border, but we've had double that come into the United Kingdom, if not more, 200,000 over the last 8 years. We've got Zia Youssef of Reform UK that's actually over there right now. He was going to come on the show. I don't know why he dropped out. It's really interesting circumstances, interesting morning news-wise. But he is going and seeing what can be done. But on another channel, he was warning last night that we might see scenes like this on the UK coastline. Do you think that that is a possibility?
Yes, of course it is. This is not, these distances are not vast distances. I mean, most of us know this because most of us have been on holiday to these places. But, you know, a famous pilgrimage was to walk from your home in England, cross the English Channel and walk to the Spanish city of Vigo, and that's called, and go to Santiago de Compostela.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was in the Middle Ages. You know, it's perfectly normal that there have been tribes that have, the Vandal tribe invaded the Western Roman Empire, got to Spain, and the Romans were a bit cocky, frankly, and they thought, oh, well, that's fine. They're just in Spain. We can control them. And no, they crossed the Straits of Gibraltar, and then they ended up sacking the major city, which is Carthage, which is now in what is now Tunisia. You can't get cocky with this stuff. I've got behind me a painting I'm really fond of. If I go to bed and I leave my door wide open every night, how many nights is it going going to be before I come back. I come downstairs and the painting's not there anymore.
Mm.
You know, it's just human nature. We seem to believe that we've sort of transcended humanity. We seem to believe like that we're some sort of delusional race that's somehow morally superior to everybody else. So we can just let ourselves be taken for granted. This is suicidal empathy. For me, the most telling picture was of a lady of advanced age hugging one of these migrants and weeping, and I just thought this is absolutely delusional. You know, these and once you're not a racist, once you don't see things through racial lenses, you just see these as young, dangerous, uncivilized men. They're not educated, they're not civilized, they don't cleave to a moral code. They are therefore dangerous, and it wouldn't matter if the whole lot of them were ethnically Anglo-Saxon like me. They'd still be dangerous. In fact, my ancestors were a little bit dangerous too when we came illegally in small boats. A sensible country defends itself. A sensible nation has a border. A sensible household shuts and locks its door at night. That's what you do, and we have apparently forgotten that.
Well, absolutely. And let's have a look at the coordinated effort that happened over in Morocco just a couple days ago. I mean, it's exactly what you say in terms of, I mean, I find Britain to be a golden ticket country. I'm a fan of immigration, but I think that we should be picking and choosing the brightest and best minds to bring in, because that is the type of country that Britain is. It's really on top of the food chain in my mind. The thing is, those people that, I mean, I'm not going to be gaslit by the authorities. They haven't all been deported back to Morocco. That's utter claptrap. People smuggling networks, as revealed by The Telegraph today, have been cutting prices on small boat crossings because they know that there are going to be bigger numbers now wanting to cross over. The Telegraph found that last week they were being offered crossings for as little as 600 euros, £500, and that's at least 200 euros cheaper than the week before. Traffickers spoke of their excitement over the 60,000 migrants that stormed the Spanish enclaves. Even though some of them were returned to Morocco, they said there are many that will come through. Smuggling networks are now hiring new operatives across Europe to get the most out of the situation. Look, that's just sickening, to be honest. And you're right about, it's interesting, the human rights lawyers aren't weighing in on this, but over 60 people died trying to cross that enclave. The situation is totally catastrophic. Paul, I want to bring you in here. Paul Cox is here as well, Stephen. Just about your thoughts on this. We should prepare for the fact that there will be massive numbers now out of this coming into Britain, the land of milk and honey, because we do offer the biggest benefits. They are young men with a lot of chutzpah. They know exactly which systems to try and poke and get into and play properly.
Yeah, Stephen said it brilliantly. Good morning, Stephen. By the way, thank you for joining us from ancient Greece. Really do appreciate that this morning. Stephen did rightly point out that if you take race out of the equation, which seems to be very difficult in discourse these days, but, you know, many of us manage to do it and don't even consider it at any point, these are dangerous men that don't have a moral code. And that's, you know, just saying that out loud would have got us all in trouble maybe a year or two ago, but it's very obvious and it was very orchestrated. One thing I'd like to focus on, I'd be really interested to understand what Stephen's view on this is. We find it very difficult in this country to pull legal levers, because of the way the ECHR is interpreted by our overly liberal and progressive leaders. Spain, however, that's another level. Pedro Sanchez has refused to call this a national emergency because he doesn't believe legally it constitutes one. They can only be acts of God or, you know, weather or nuclear bombs or anything of that kind. Steve, what do you make of the fact that Pedro Sanchez, the socialist leader in Spain, will not constitute this as a national emergency?
So the socialists / communists, and it really doesn't matter which, Churchill just refused to distinguish between the two, because the minute you go down that rabbit hole, they just witter on at you and they bore you to death.
He is the head of the Socialist Workers' Party, Pedro,
Yeah,
isn't
exactly,
he?
exactly. So just socialists. They got into law many years ago, and they've been killing it with this confusion, and they're basically debasing it and gaslighting law and gaslighting lawyers like me who take law seriously, because that's obviously nonsense. Obviously, it is a national emergency. Obviously, any proper legal test for what is or is not a national emergency would include the invasion of nearly 80,000 men. And in fact, those who don't like the EU, like 22 EU member states have said exactly what I'm saying. They've all said that the Spanish Supreme Court is absolutely off its rocker and that this is a nonsense as law. And it is a nonsense as law. And what you'll see, and they've done this quite deliberately, the socialists are like termites, they're like dry rot. They got into law, and I'm afraid now when we lean on the law, it's going to collapse. It's not solid because it's been infected over a very long time. Here we are riven through with the ECHR. We've got rot everywhere that needs pulling out of the legal system if we want a healthy one. But yeah, I mean, at the moment, so the small boats crisis has passed our test. We have a legal test for what is and what is not a national emergency, and it's met that test for years. And I actually was asked for legal advice from the Sunak government. I probably shouldn't say that, but we're going through rule of law collapse, so who cares at this point? And I said then that it met the legal test, because it obviously does. So why are we not engaging in a national emergency to stop our small boats? Why is Spain lying through its teeth? And the answer in both cases, I'm very sorry to say, is socialism. They just lie.
Yes, and honestly, we've had our own coup here. It's no secret to anyone listening that we've got our own Prime Minister who is that way inclined and just doesn't want to talk about it. It's kind of the other level where he just doesn't want to act like it exists. When he's questioned about it, his response will be, the Home Secretary, Joanna Mahmood, has got it all under control. We've cut boat crossings, we've cut that. Well, we've cut boat crossings maybe, but the size of the boats are now the size of a bus. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, we had 165 people on one boat. You've also got people dying at sea. You've had those 3 women that mysteriously all had a heart attack at the same time, which the possibility of that is sort of like 1 in 300 million or something ridiculous like that. Those people that were on that boat, we don't know what happened, by the way, at sea, are now in the country, living off taxpayer dollars, living in hotels, living in HMOs, wherever they've been put. We don't know what's happened here. I'm just alleging that they could potentially be dangerous individuals, considering they presided over 3 women dying under their watch. I mean, it is a really, really terrible situation. You're right about this socialist government and how dangerous it is. Pedro Sanchez legalised over 500,000 illegal migrants earlier in this year, yet he wants to turn around and blame the Moroccan government for this. It's outrageous, isn't it, Stephen?
It's very, very dangerous. And we have to start recognizing that the reason that Senator McCarthy existed in the United States, and the reason that they had to have all of the who are you a communist, are you not a communist, is because these people are incredibly dangerous. They just lie. They want nasty outcomes. Even if you go back to, it's much older than communism. Communism is just the wrapper it currently wears. And as I said, we don't talk about the wrappers because it's a waste of time. It's really just the human emotion of envy. And once a human being is consumed by envy, they just want to hurt other humans. They quite like that. It's a very dark path for a human being to go down. I recommend listeners and viewers don't do it. Personally, I fight against it by being a Christian and thinking that all of my fellow humans are of immutable value. So we're all loved of God. Therefore, we're all equal, even if we've got different talents and that expresses in different ways and we have different fortunes. Fine, but we're all valuable. But these people consumed by envy, they don't. But
that's not Christian values, is it? You know, 2 people struggling for breath. What I'm trying to say is it's the left that are actually pushing for this type of stuff to happen. Yeah. And that's the bad part of it.
Yeah, but they left God a long time ago. And we just have to accept these socialists are not nice people. They keep trying to come across as nice. And I go back to Shakespeare. Fair is foul, and foul is fair. We live in that age, okay? Anything that's trying to tell you that, ooh, it's a bit charming, it wears mascara, it's a tiny man, and ooh, he's a bit northern. Yeah, don't trust him. He's going to be dangerous.
I quite like the mascara, Stephen. I like the T-shirt.
It's getting through it by bottle load at this rate. But, you know, we need to understand.
We don't know if he wears mascara.
Well, that's fine. But he's not going to sue it. But and at this point, anybody who's trying to go, oh, we must be kind, we must be good, it's like, no, we have to be a bit foul, I'm afraid.
Just look at the reaction to Anne Widdecombe's death, and you'll know everything you need to know about how the left feels about murder and death. And all the horrible things in between. Yeah, and us.
Yeah,
you're right.
And if we're going to protect the kids, we're going to have to be a bit tough, I'm afraid, a bit muscular. We're going to have to do a load of things that we previously thought were impossible to do, which are clearly not impossible to do. And we're going to have to do things like have a border. And if necessary, we're going to need to defend that border with force, because that's what you have to do. If you don't put armed men on the city wall, then the city wall will be overcome. You know, it's just very, very simple stuff. And I'm afraid the socialists have led us here. They are largely to blame for all of this, but the rest of us are just going to have to do two things: ignore the socialists and do some pretty tough stuff that probably we didn't want to do before, but I'm afraid we're going to have to grow up and do now, or the kids won't be safe.
Such a good point. Do we have to go?
No.
Because we've got Stephen. I mean, I love Stephen.
Me too. I'm literally just like...
He's not just great hair and a pair of braces. This man is very clever, and I'm very interested to hear what you have to say. But we don't teach socialism in the way you and I understand it, Stephen, but in our curriculum. We should be, shouldn't we? We should be teaching the dark side of socialism. I was just on this station a couple of weekends ago, and a clip went sort of semi-viral of just describing what socialism is and how it connects to communism and how it differs from capitalism. And it was like waking people up. But this stuff is, I mean, I'm no genius. This stuff is freely available. It doesn't take a lot of reading to get to that point. But we should be teaching this, shouldn't we?
We should, but I mean, Samara just read out a brilliant example of the free market working, which is the people traffickers, because they're an unregulated, non-socialist invested structure. They are a free market, and so they're lowering prices because free market capitalism is the only way that you actually lower prices. All Tiny Andy's talk of let's interfere in the market, I'll make energy cheaper, woo, I'll make bread cheaper, woo. You can't do that, Tiny Andy, because the minute the state interferes, you actually wreck the market. If you wanted this country to have a functioning economy, you'd let the people smugglers run it.
Couldn't agree with you more. And honestly, it is not valuing human life at all to put these people traffickers, who are the worst of the worst, the most craven people, the people who put a number on the human lives of those who try and cross the channel, promising them all this hope, that are the ones who really, really... But it's, by the way, it's a massive syndicate, people trafficking. People think it's just some dude on a beach. It's not. It's a worldwide...
multi-billion-pound industry.
Massively, and all different countries have their tentacles in it. But just very quickly, because we do have to go, Stephen, I want your kind of one-line answer. Speaking of people putting all their things aside, is there going to be a pact between the right? Will the right unite?
Well, I know as a human being, every time I've fallen out with a family member or loved one, that the way that I've made it up to them is by putting a public video on Twitter.
Yes, you and me both. Yeah, that's all you need to know about that, and the sort of devilish ways that some politicians may operate. Or maybe he's just a nice guy. He wants to put the shovel aside that he was planning to bang Nigel over the head with horribly. I don't want anyone having that visual, but literally he did not want that guy to succeed, and now he wants to be besties with him. Stephen Barrett, thank you so much for coming on the show and offering those pearls of wisdom, as you always do. After the break, another person who absolutely speaks only in... well, she's a very, very wise woman, is Lady C, and she'll be joining us after these messages.
49,000 people are leaving Morocco because apparently it's war-torn. But Jet2 this morning are offering 20% off a trip to Morocco for a week. Which country in Europe wipes everybody else's backside but its own people? Here.
This is a huge football story, folks. UEFA has now said no European nation will participate in any FIFA competition so long as proposals to create a company to run the World Cup remain alive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Well, it's my favourite part of the show now. You know that with all my time on What Just Happened, great show on YouTube. Do check it out. It's hosted by the inimitable Kevin O'Sullivan. That I love a bit of royal chat. And when I saw this news that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle could come back into the royal fold after a bombshell announcement, I thought there's one woman to call about this, and it's Lady C. Welcome to the show, Lady C.
Hello, how
God,
are
you
you?
look glorious. My goodness.
It's only because I'm so ill.
Oh, really? Are you? Well, you don't look it, that's for sure. Anyone listening, Lady C looks like the jewel in the crown. Or she is wearing many jewels and a crown, and she looks fabulous, as per usual. Look, what is going on with Harry and Meghan? We know that Sir Clive, the King's longtime aide, has left randomly after about 20 years of working alongside the King. Now, Theo Rycroft, who was kind of his second in charge, has come in. He's very pro-Harry and Meghan. We obviously know that they met at Highgrove a couple of weeks ago. Now another olive branch has been extended in the past week, saying that Harry can stay at Buckingham Palace whenever he likes, which in my opinion is a horrific move. You've got two of the most unpopular royals on record, Harry and Meghan, and he's giving them Buckingham Palace as sort of their own personal hotel. What do you make of all this news? Because in my mind, Lady C, it seems like there's a lot of plates spinning and Harry might actually triumph out of this.
Oh, I don't think so for a second. First of all, Clive Alderton hasn't left yet. He's not leaving for a year. Secondly, all Harry is going to need to do is hear no from Theo Rycroft 4 times before he decides he's the latest enemy. And so that's going to inevitably happen, because Harry would like to believe that his father and his grandmother would love to do whatever he wants, but they are prevented by mean, horrid members of staff. The mean, horrid members of staff implement their wishes. As for this supposed rapprochement, and Harry's now all of a sudden going to be ending up back in the fold, it's absolutely not going to happen. The King doesn't want Harry back. The Queen doesn't want Harry back. William and Catherine don't want Harry back. Everybody knows that Harry's treacherous. He's unpredictable. He is under the influence of various substances, as well as a rather massive malignant substance called Meghan Markle.
That's obviously all alleged. We don't know, but you're right. He has written in Spare that he loves to, well, he was smoking weed at Courtney Cox's house and there were some magic mushrooms taking place. And we know that he's actually self-admitted to a pretty textured history with drugs. Yeah. We also know, though, he's unemployed. He went on a podcast a couple of weeks ago saying that, he was asked his job description. It was Joe Marlowe's podcast. And he was asked, what do you do? And he goes, well, I'd like to be known as Duke. And it's like, and Prince of England or something random like that. I mean, we know that what he does do is sit at home all day, wallowing. And what I can last remember him doing is going and talking at a property conference for £50,000. So he is aimless. He doesn't know what he's going to do. I always see him like a kind of well-trained racehorse in the way that he doesn't know what to do outside the tracks. And Montecito is very much outside the tracks. Do you think that he is... Pardon?
Very good analogy.
Oh, yeah, that's how I see him. He's not good at anything else but being a royal. He's tried TV producer. He's tried, I don't know, polo documentary guy. He can't do it all. So what is he going to do? And is this why he's trying to get back into the fold, even if he may not, as you rightly say?
Well, they're not going to get back into the fold, but they need the appearance of getting back into the fold. They're about to go bust. Harry is facing a bill of tens of millions of pounds from associated newspapers, are going after him hell for leather. Quite rightly so, too. And the king is not going to be rescuing him, nor is William. So where's he going to get the money from? He and Meghan have been on diminishing returns. They never, ever, as I said all along, got 100 million from Netflix. They never got 20 million from Spotify. He did earn over 20 million from Penguin Random House for his autobiography. But, you know, by the time you offset all sorts of other things, it's not 20 million in his pocket. So they have serious financial problems, and they also have earning capacity problems because nobody's interested in them anymore. They are massive turn-offs. And, you know, you mentioned that he got 50,000 for something. Remember, when he started out, he was getting $1 million a pop.
Yes, you're right.
And they've run out of options, and they are hoping to spin it so that ultimately various television stations in America, etc., will commission them to do something and hopefully bring in some money. And Meghan is hoping to flog those ghastly things that she sells on Was Never, you know, flower sprinkles and rotten fruit and all the rest of it. And none of which is selling. So it's all a desperation plan. And they're hoping that if they renew the royal connection and lead everybody to believe that it's going to be a more constant connection, that ultimately they're going to be half in, half out, or be able to present themselves as such, and that therefore that will increase their earning capacity. I don't think it's working. They're extremely unpopular in the United States of America. And I've been getting information from official Democratic circles in the United States of America about their activities, which tells me right then and there that as far as the American Democratic parties, they are toast as well.
Really? So no Meghan Sussex, Governor of California?
Oh, my dear, why would you insult her?
What, she wants to be president?
Surely you meant her Imperial Majesty.
Oh, God.
First of the United Kingdom, the rest of the world, and President of the United States of America. I mean, the woman is totally delusional.
In her tawdry dreams, that would happen. But Lady C, you're completely spot on about the fact that they are facing huge money issues. Even Elton John, who is said to be the person who dragged Harry into this court case in the beginning, has revived his comeback tour and is just magically doing 3 shows in Mexico City. Just randomly. No. I speculate that is to pay for the huge legal bill that they are now saddled with because of Harry and even Elton's paranoia, and that is what got the best of them. And ultimately now they're going to have to pay the price to the tune of about $13 million. There are estimates of even more, 18 million, etc. So there is money problems. That leads me to Meghan Markle, because she genuinely did get duped in some sort of way. She thought that she was marrying a multi-billionaire. That's how she saw Harry. Unfortunately, the reality of when she came to him, he was living in Frogmore Cottage with his sort of stash and his, picked-apart couch. She found very quickly that he, first of all, is not a cash cow. He's got some inheritance. And second of all, he's useless outside of the royal gates and totally useless in America. So what's going to happen there? Do you think that potentially Meghan is starting to realise Harry is not all that and she's going to have to go her own way and pursue a sort of Jeff Bezos type of character for the dreams that she wants to live? Because we know she doesn't want to step foot in Britain again. And I know that she has, but I don't know if she'll be stepping foot in London anytime soon.
Well, I think you're spot on in her terms of her ambition, but not, I don't think, with due respect, she's known for a very long time that Harry didn't have the money that she would have liked him to have. He also initially deceived her into thinking that he was more powerful than he was. And so each of them was deceiving the other, but she deceived him into thinking they could move to America and they could compete with William and Catherine. So William and Catherine would have Britain and the Commonwealth, they would have the rest of the world, and they would be the global royal couple, which of course hasn't happened because Meghan is as incompetent as Harry is in terms of finance. I mean, the only thing that's actually made them any money has been the Judas Act. Otherwise, they haven't made any money. And they are losing money left, right, and centre. Quite frankly, I think never did two people more richly deserve penury than the two of them. I think they are studies in treachery. And I think that, you know, the way they have behaved and the way they have treated the people of this country and their behaviour has been just beyond belief.
Completely. I mean, they've actually been routinely dragging the royal family through hell. Not to mention, I mean, you mentioned about the fact that they do envision this sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out royal vision that they have for themselves, which, as you'll be well aware, and the audience maybe should be reminded, was the Queen's dying wish was to not have them be 1 foot in, 1 foot out royals. You can have it one way or the other, is what she said. And she was completely right about that. And she had good reason for that, because she doesn't want the Hollywoodification of the royal family, you know? And that is exactly what Meghan is eyeing up. And just a quick word for you, Lady C, on the fact that Meghan and Harry did go to Althorpe, and we had no idea about it until Meghan invaded her own privacy and posted a photo on Instagram of the children visiting that grave / being on the property. Now, my speculation is that there is some sort of Netflix documentary in the works. It is the anniversary of Diana's death, 30 years next year. You talk about the fact that they're penniless. Unfortunately, they will need to literally make money off Diana's death at this point to pay for their legal fees, their lifestyle, their massive mortgage they have in Montecito, and Meghan's liking for Oscar de la Renta coats, which are $8,000 a pop. Do you think that they were filming a documentary when they were there? And do you think they're exploiting Diana's death in this way? Or was it just a nice little family reunion?
With Meghan, everything's about money. Everything's about money and power and attention. And they don't need a huge camera crew. They only need a very, very efficient, capable mobile phone. And let's remember that Meghan, when she was in Jamaica, for instance, with Harry, they were followed around by a camera crew. I know this because friends of mine saw them at trial and actually phoned me up before it became public. So you never believe who just said hello to me. I said, who? Oh, Meghan. I said, do you know her? No, she said, she just came up to us because, you know, she thought, oh, we're at trial and we're with very rich grand people. So she never misses an opportunity to make a connection.
Absolutely. And you're completely right about the fact that she loves a home video. She loves to get her iPhone camera out and film things. And I suspect that that will be used in a potential Diana documentary, which they'll give first look to Netflix for. Because if you think about that original documentary they made for Netflix, she had all that sort of self-taped, self-styled stuff. Remember the Freedom Flight with Tyler Perry on the private jet, and she was filming Doria, and Harry was getting his iPhone camera out, and they were acting like Escaping Canada was escaping some sort of war zone where they were, you know, they were going to be tortured or something like that. It was mental, honestly, absolutely mental stuff. But you're right, I don't think they had a camera crew, but I do think they did a lot of filming there, cravenly, trying to basically take what they can can out of Diana's legacy. Lady C, my goodness, so great of you to join us, even when you're feeling poorly. You look a million bajillion bucks, more than Meghan will ever be worth, that's for sure. Thank you and enjoy your Sunday. That's the great, brilliant Lady C, royal author and insider, one of my favourite people. After the break, we'll still be talking about the divided right. Paul is questioning everything over there in the corner after he's just listened to me rip into Meghan Markle with Lady C. So we will get back on track and talk about all that. Also, your calls, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Give me a call. Let me know your thoughts, because there's still a lot to get into here, and a lot of different opinions now coming out as everyone wakes up and starts tweeting about what they really think about Rupert Lowe's olive branch to Nigel reform and uniting the right. That after the break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, my goodness. Chris Phillips is here to join us. He's former DCI, Met Police, ex-head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Officer. I didn't know that. My goodness, sorry. I'm just having a revelation on air. God, you're an accomplished fellow. You know, this is always the way. When you've got a sort of description like that, you never bang on about it. So welcome to the show. And Paul Cox is also here as well. I want to get your thoughts, obviously, on these people smugglers cutting prices to exploit the migrant crisis. This is something that I just won't hear it. I just won't hear the lies that they've all been deported back overnight. Should we believe them, Chris?
No, I don't think we should believe them. And not only that, what we've got to remember is that this is big business. Crime these days is multinational big business. And they make huge amounts of money on it. They operate on the dark web. And they've even got things like HR and all sorts of stuff that means that they're very well organised. And of course, they'll lower prices if they can, if they need to, in order to keep their business going. And we need a real big plan to stop this mass immigration from happening, because mass immigration just means insecurity for everyone.
Totally. And I wish people spoke more about the fact that people traffickers and gangs are actually not these sort of one-man band situations. They are huge, huge syndicates that operate all over Europe, all over the United Kingdom. They traffic drugs, they traffic children, they traffic people, and all the rest, and weapons as well. They are not flowery organisations, and they're definitely not something you could smash overnight, which Keir Starmer tried to dupe the public into thinking. Paul, I want to bring you in on this. I mean, what do you make of the situation now? It seems like they just want to shut the public up, and they want to say everything's back to normal. Whatever you saw was just a mythical dream, and we're all fine now.
Well, they wanted to shut the public up before we found anything out. Unfortunately, the pictures spoke for themselves, didn't they? As soon as we first saw those pictures, I went on to X and looked at left-wing Twitter, essentially, to see what they were saying. And they were saying there's 200 here, 800 there. Someone went as far as saying there's only 1,300 people. You could see, unless you can't count or you've got no concept of what maybe tens of thousands of people look like on a beach, then we could see that this was... OK, I'm happy to accept that it's orchestrated in some way, manufactured, but an invasion. And I can understand if it's political and there's something between Morocco and Spain and Algeria they're trying to make a point about. But the fact that they're doing this and they're escaping one to the other. And by the way, apparently there's a radio station called LBC. I've never heard of it. But anyway, on LBC is a guy called James O'Brien. Never heard of him either. But what he was saying, Don't know what that was all about. But he was saying this is just a set of people travelling from the habitable to the habitable. Total nonsense. Like Morocco is not this inhabitable place where you can actually pay a lot of money from the UK to go on holiday today if you wanted to. So look, from the minute one, they've absolutely tried to make sure the narrative is there's nothing to see here, there's nothing to worry about here. Europe's not a continent. All of a sudden there's borders, by the way, because they can't get from us to there. So it's an atrocity in many ways, particularly when it comes to the optics and what it says about our leadership.
Now, it's taken these visuals, this crazy uproar, millions upon millions of views. I've got relatives in Australia asking me what the hell is going on with Europe at the moment, and Britain in turn. The EU has called an emergency meeting to discuss Ceuta, the migrant crossings. They're going to meet on Tuesday. What do you think will come of this, Chris?
Well, I'm hoping that common sense prevails and suddenly Europe realises that it is actually being overrun, slowly but surely, and on this occasion with a bigger push. And you've also got to understand who would want to foment a society that kind of disintegrates from within. So you have got nation states that are aiding and abetting and even sometimes paying for some of this this mass migration, pushing people towards the West in order to destabilise. That's most definitely a thing. And Europe itself, the US, the West generally, have got to start getting their act together and realising that this has got to stop and we've got to push back against it.
Absolutely, and you can see already that, there's some very, very concerning cases that have come out. Of course, we've had over 60 deaths during that crossing. We've had multiple deaths at sea crossing the English Channel just this past week. There's a serious element to human suffering here that no one wants to kind of get into their head. I mean, these people smuggling gangs, you know so much about this, Chris. Why do you think they continue to operate and why haven't they been taken out? Because in some ways, I've actually spoken to some of them myself. I know this sounds really weird, but I did get on TikTok and actually look, and it's very easy to get into contact with them. So why have they not been taken out?
Well, of course, some of them do get taken out, but the other thing, of course, is that they are multinational. They're not just all based in one country. They're individuals pushing people from Turkey across. This is organised, and it's criminal networks. But also, criminal networks often have been helped along the way by nation states. Very difficult thing to deal with. The only way I believe that you can stop this from happening is to turn them back immediately they get here and return from whence they came. That's the only way that you'll stop people from thinking that they can come to the UK, come to Spain. And all the mood music in Spain at the moment is, come on in. We need more people, and of course they do, but they don't necessarily need people that are coming across the border.
I know, it's like Pedro Sanchez from the Socialist Workers' Party wants to create this underclass of immigrants that will kind of just essentially work really cheaply, can be exploited. I mean, it's exploitation all along, and it's the left wing that is calling for this sort of system. I mean, Paul, what do you make of the fact that people smugglers just continue to operate, exploit every system? You can already see their minds working in overdrive over what's happened over the weekend and how they can funnel these people directly to the United Kingdom.
Well, it's huge business, as Chris has articulated brilliantly, and the reason it's huge business is because it doesn't have any of the things that we have to worry about if we're in business.
No taxes.
You know, it's not affected by governments. It's not affected by policy or ideology or anything like that. Chris, can you tell me something? Is there any way that this can be stopped?
I think the only way to stop it is to turn people back. Literally, I think Australia did a great job.
We did Operation Sovereign Border. It took 1 week.
Everyone was up in arms across the world at how bad Australia was dealing with this situation. And now we can see it was needed, and it's needed here, it's needed across Europe. Angela Merkel started this mass influx, if you like, by accepting Syrians and others. And I think that was all to do with her Eastern German background and refugee status, etc.
Yeah, Germany seems to be doing great at the moment.
Yeah, 10 years down the line and they're
Yeah.
paying a massive price.
Human price, yeah.
Irreversible price as well, because unless you get in and re-migrate, shall we say, there's not a lot you can do. And by the time, particularly in a Western society, if you've been here for a year or two, there's no way that there's any government with the gumption to do anything about that. So I fear, Chris, that they're never going to do the thing that they need to do. And as a result, this is only ever going to get worse. Would you say that's true?
Well, it is, unless, I mean, if you're in a house that's becoming flooded because the tap's on, the first thing you do is you turn the tap off in order to start solving the problem. That's where you've got to stop this mass migration that we're seeing, illegal mass migration, and actually treat them as criminals that they are, actually, you know, by jumping on a boat and thinking they can float into the UK. They become criminals, and they need to be returned from whence they came. Hard as that might seem, you have to do that in order to then start dealing with the problems we've already got. We've got 45,000 people in the UK currently on the terrorism watch list. They've got similar numbers in France, Germany, and even Spain. So this is not a problem that's going to go away in our generation or the next generation. It's something that's going to have to be solved over the next 2 or 3 generations.
And 78% of that list is Islamic extremism, and majority of the, and I'm not, by the way, majority of people that come across the channel are not extremists, rapists, murderers, but we have seen the news, we know what's coming through, and it's too many of them that have taken the kindness of the United Kingdom as weakness and completely squandered any opportunity that this country did give them. People have been raped, people have been murdered. Rhiannon White, I had the privilege of sitting down with Siobhan White, whose daughter was murdered by a Sudanese asylum seeker at the hotel that she was working at. It just takes one death like that to say we need to do something to stop this. And you're right, Australia had the right message.
If you're fleeing a war-torn country, you don't go on your own. You take your wife and your children, don't you? That's the first thing you do. You get out and you go to somewhere that's safe. That's not what this is all about. This is about moving from countries that are poorer, if you like, into rich countries. And if you want to stay as a rich country, relatively, then you've got to have some borders. This was recognised many, many years ago that you have to have borders in order for stability. Those borders are breaking down, and someone needs to do something about it.
Chris Phillips, thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday afternoon. Really appreciate your view into that. Yes, my goodness. I mean, it's like we're acting as if we're in a time of great prosperity, and we're not. We're in a time of great austerity. It's like we could, you know, the handouts to people who are not fleeing from war-torn countries. A lot of them are fleeing from France. I mean, it's just, yeah.
It is an atrocity. It's a tragedy, not just for the people, but for the culture. That talking to someone like Chris makes you realise that what we've been saying for a long time is that this is irreversible in the space of a generation or two. That's incredible. So what we're relying on here is winning the hearts and minds of people so that they can understand that this is not good for them. And that's really difficult. That's incredibly difficult, because even if you don't see that it's impacting you day to day, I bet it is. I bet it is. Nearly all the things you can point to that are causing you day-to-day concerns will be coming because we are overpopulated in this country, but overpopulated by people that aren't contributing to the system that has to pay for it.
And even this big story this morning of uniting the right, Rupert Lowe joining forces with Nigel Farage. These are the people that do have it in the interest to stop it. I just wish that they could put their egos aside, and maybe they will. Time will tell. After the break, Harman Singh, the owner of Singh's restaurant Rangras, he's been hit with some pretty horrible attacks just this last night, I believe it was. We're going to talk to him about that, and also the fact that Vikram Digwar's mother has been moved from her prison cell. Wonder why? That after this break.
49,000 people are leaving Morocco because apparently it's war-torn. But Jet2 this morning are offering 20% off a trip to Morocco for a week. Which country in Europe wipes everybody else's backside but its own people? Here.
This is a huge football story, folks. UEFA has now said no European nation will participate in any FIFA competition so long as proposals to create a company to run the World Cup remain alive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Well, I'm just going to get right into it. Harman Singh, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us. I feel like every time I open X, you're getting attacked again. Last night, we might fetch the video, but I can just explain it to you, and you're the one who actually lived it. You got attacked again. Now, for those who are not aware of Harman, even though he's massively famous on the internet and also just within his community, he has a store by which, because he is a Sikh man, means that he cannot serve halal meat because the Sikh religion permits that, peace for the animals, and halal is a very controversial way of killing animals. Now, he put this A4 sign, I live very close to him, on his restaurant that just says, no halal meat. He has been subject to the most vicious attacks that I've ever seen, genuinely, a litany of them. I went to go eat at his restaurant, and outside there are people just loitering, trying to intimidate him. Harman, you were attacked again last night. Can you tell us what happened?
It was not last night, the night before. There's one guy, a group of guys, boys, and some girls. They are harassing my.
We've got the clip actually. Shall we show it?
Yeah, I'll show you that. Yeah.
Let's play that clip.
Very good.
I mean, honestly, this is all for an A4 sheet of paper. For anyone listening, by the way, all he's done is just say no halal meat sold here. Sorry, as you were saying, Harman.
The group of these kids, they are harassing my customer from last 1 week. I did post about him before also, that what he's doing, this guy is doing outside, swearing at us, harassing us. And the day before this, before attack, he came to my restaurant and he was harassing my customers. And he told me that he will smoke me.
So a death threat? Death
threat, yeah. And I just laughed at him, nothing else, because I don't know how old is he. He's a teenager, underage, I don't know. But my customers were feel harassed. They were scared. So I stand in front of my shop and just try to, in case they don't come in and do something nasty. Eventually they left, and the next evening, the mother of this guy. So I never mentioned that he's inbred, and if you feel bad.
Yeah, and this is, by the way, a very, very derogatory term, and I really don't. No, of course, yeah, no, but like we absolutely don't support that. But I do just want to say that these attacks are completely unsubstantiated on your property, and you should not have to go through that hell, Harman, that you have gone through. And also the fact that the Met Police doesn't have someone sitting outside your door trying to protect you is madness. Look, Harman, thank you so much for joining us. I did just want to wish you well, because I think that you shouldn't be put through that for whatever you say. We do still have free speech in this country, but, I don't support, obviously, that word being used. But it is, no violence is ever acceptable towards a member of the community. Paul, look, we are getting messages in now about the right uniting.
Yes, I'm sure we are.
It's been 3 hours. What's your conclusion while we've got a minute?
It has developed a little bit further. I think that I'm very interested to see what Nigel Farage has to say. I'm still of the mind that it's slightly cynical from Rupert Lowe. There's no reason to think so far that Rupert would be entirely genuine. So